Recognize Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be very brief in my submission in relation to these two bills before this honorable chamber. I do, sir, have to start by saying that when I listened to the presentation of the leader of government business, it made me remember something that my grandmother used to say. She used to say, when the head bad, the whole body bad. And of course, sir, there were a number of practices taking place in the past that cannot now continue. And I think, sir, that it is important that as we reflect on those bad practices, we recognize that they have to be eliminated and that we have to ensure that as we move away, as the leader of government business indicated, from the precipice of disaster, we engage in prudent, proper, and good financial management. So I think it is very important that government, through its functionaries, exercises discipline. And so it may be critical, particularly at a time when we are speaking about engaging in measures to bring back the economy and to make this country a shining light and a shining example in the region, that we institutionalize financial discipline and financial prudence. And so I think that these two bills are extremely important and timely, because government has to set the example. Government has to take the lead. And of course, there are critical decisions that have to be made at a time when the country faces the kind of economic challenges that we know the country faces. And so I say to you that in this environment, it may be critical with respect to governance and the way our institutions function, that we have a paradigm shift. We certainly, sir, cannot function in a manner where a government sets rules and breaks those rules. That is totally unacceptable. So, Mr. President, sir, we have to ensure that we are able to properly control public expenditure. But at the same time, I think, sir, that it is critical that we look at the content of public expenditure. You know, sir, I am of the view that it is a requirement for government and a requirement for those in support of government action to facilitate a higher level of public expenditure in the area of growth. Because what is going to be able to take us through this very challenging time is the ability not only to look at the areas where we can identify revenue potentials and eliminate areas where there's wastage and inefficiency and all of that. But what is also going to be very critical, Mr. President, is being able to identify those areas of growth. Public expenditure, therefore, must be tied to growth strategies. That, Mr. President, is very critical and very important. And, sir, it extends beyond central government. Not just speaking about ministries, speaking, sir, too, about state-owned enterprises. And we are all aware that there's an exercise that is being undertaken. I believe the Honourable Prime Minister spoke to this recently in an interview which she had, where she talked about this exercise with respect to state-owned enterprises, determining if those enterprises are essential, if they're highly desirable, identifying those that are optional and those that are optional and could be provided, sir, in a much better way. And I think that exercise is important because it helps us to look not only at how these state-owned enterprises are operating, but it allows us as well to look at the content of the expenditure. And that is very critical as we seek to ensure that we have the correct growth strategies. Mr. President, I think as well as we speak to this issue of state-owned enterprises, we have to ensure that there is compliance. You know, I heard this morning the leader of government business speak to a number of audits that are being laid. And, you know, there are times when you hear about audited financial statements, and there are for years before. That, sir, is totally unacceptable. We have to enforce compliance, sir, and if there is a breach, there must be a penalty for such a breach. The truth is, sir, that we cannot continue in the environment that would have existed 10 years ago. The truth is, sir, that we do not have the luxury of time. In fact, sir, it reminded me of a story I heard of a man who got a call from his doctor 8 o'clock at night. And he was told by the doctor that he had bad news and terrible news, which he wanted first. And the man said to his doctor, "Give me the terrible news first." And the doctor said, "The lab made an error with your results. And I have to inform you, you are going to die in 48 hours. And the man said, "That is the terrible news. Well, what then could be the bad news?" And the doctor said, "I was trying to reach you almost 2 days ago." The truth is, sir, that time was not a luxury for him. And time, sir, is not a luxury for us. So we must act swiftly, and we must act now, and act in the best interest of Barbados. I thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to be brief. As I alluded to earlier this morning, my issue with these bills is not necessarily the content, because frankly, as I said earlier, the way the information would have been disseminated to me, I was unaware of what was happening to me. I don't know what happened. It is what it is. But I'm listening this morning to particularly the members of the government side speak of using, I think his adjectives, nouns, whatever, proper management, rigor, rules, control, doing things properly. And my submission is simply this. This chamber, as far as I'm concerned, is here for a reason and a purpose. It cannot be that we are here to rubber stamp that which happens in the other place. As far as I know, particularly as it relates to the independent senators, we do not have a political agenda. Therefore, we are not here to ratify anybody's political agenda one way or the other. We are not members of the opposition, so we're not here to blast the government just because that's what oppositions tend to do. I'm not saying that Mr. Franklin does it all the time. But we, as far as I know, we don't have a political agenda. Therefore, we are here because we are looking out for the interests of the people of Barbados. And if it is that we are being asked to look at proposals for amendments of legislation, then, Mr. President, it stands to reason that we should be given reasonable time to do so, particularly in areas where we are not familiar. Now, Senator Adams, this morning, it was like a lesson, and thank God he was not technical. But take, for example, he spoke of, and I wrote it down, open market purchasing. I don't really know what it means, but it sounds like it might have enhanced the legislation, but let's suppose it could have, right? If we are coming today to deal with a bill of which we received notice on the 28th of July, which is a Saturday, which I didn't even know that's how notices happen, for a hearing that is happening for a sitting that's happening on the 30th, who is to say that what Senator Adams spoke about could not have enhanced the legislation or the bill even further to make it more rigorous, Senator Grant, or more fiscally, properly management-wise, Senator McConney? You said that somewhere in there. So there's a supposition, I would think, particularly with the Fiscal Management and Audit Amendment Bill, where a date of the 31st of July is stipulated in the legislation as if to say, no matter what happens, it's going to be passed by the Senate on the 30th because it's going to be in effect by the 31st for that legislation to be effective. I have a challenge with that. Because if the Senate found there was a problem with the legislation or it needed to be enhanced or improved, how are you presupposing the dates of commencement? What are you saying about the Senate? We don't have any input to make? We're just going to rubber stamp what comes up from below. We've already shown that we don't do that. So I am saying, if we are to do what we are supposed to do, as I understand it, properly, to use the words, so that we have effective and better management, rigorous management, controls, rules, we need to be informed and we need to have better and proper time of with what we're being asked to look at. That is my challenge with today's sitting as it relates to these two pieces of legislation. Central Bank of Barbados Amendment Bill 2018 and the Financial Management and Audit Amendment Bill 2018. And as I looked while others spoke at the legislation for the first time, as against the bills, I see the points made by the opposition, the government senators. You're creating an environment of control.
Yes.
Of course, when I look at the Central Bank Act, I'm seeing a limit of 10%, but then I'm seeing, or anything else that the House of Assembly is going to do. So it's almost like a limit, but you still take away the limit. So in that regard, I wasn't certain, but I suppose it was better than it was before, except that if you had put a full stop instead of and any other, to me it would have been more effective to make the point that the government has been making, that you want more control. Because by virtue of going on to giving the House of Assembly the same power to change it and to do more than the 10%, you in essence went back to how the legislation currently stands. But hey, you have election promises, you are a government, you have an agenda. That's fine. Do you. But do you can't mean doing what I am here to do, which is to look after the interests of the people of Barbados. And it cannot be that we are passing legislation and I sit silent because I'm not apprised of the matter. That is also flawed, and that's not what I'm here to do. So my issue is how it's being done. You are galloping. Everything is wrong. Your agenda is to fix it. That's fine. But you still have to do it right. I think, Senator McConney, you're the one that spoke about transparency. Transparency means that when the bill comes to the Senate, the senators had a reasonable time to read, digest, analyze, and, heaven forbid, seek counsel from those who know. Central Bank and Financial Management and Audit is not what I do. I should have been given the opportunity to confer with someone to tell me if 10% makes sense, or should it be 5%, or 13%, or 7.5% makes sense, or it should be 2%. I'm not supposed to be sitting ratifying anything. I'm not supposed to be voting on anything that I have not had an opportunity to seek wise counsel. My Bible talks about seeking wise counsel. And that's what I'm talking about as it relates to sitting in this august house as a senator appointed by the Governor General of Barbados. So, Fortunately for today, the amendments sought are not lengthy. They were not particularly convoluted. They were not particularly technical. So this time around, it works for government and for today to some extent. But it cannot be that this is going to be something that's going to happen and I'm not going to talk about it, because I want it to be perfectly clear. I am not here to rubber stamp anybody's agenda. Therefore, if you reasonably want me to speak, and I believe that it is only fitting and fair, and I believe, Mr. President, when we had our first sitting, you spoke at length about giving senators time to digest and to analyze, and could there at least read. I commend the Clerk of Parliament for sending the principal acts to us, so that we were not just looking at a bill without seeing what was being amended in the principal act. So I thank him for that. But I am an attorney, so every word in legislation means something. A semicolon, a full stop, a space, a number means something. Therefore, even if the amendment is short, I still want to have the opportunity to fully analyze it and come to a conclusion that I am satisfied with. And I'm not here just to sit. So, I get that you want to fine-tune. You want to set rules. You want to do limits, whether it is urgent or not, whether it's relevant or not, whether it's needed or not. That's your agenda. Do you? But don't impose yourself on me without giving me an opportunity to us. Beg your pardon. Do not impose yourself on us. I'm guided by Senator Boyce, without giving us an opportunity to properly digest. And I hear you, Sergeant. Senator Grant, but he was, right. Let me come back. The Senator part, the Grant part, the Sergeant part. I hear you, Senator Grant, that you don't have time. Things are urgent. Things are real bad. So you gotta work quick. There has to be a way. There has to be a midway point. I'm not disputing that things may be urgent. We don't have the information you all will have. We hear it like everybody else in the press. So you may know something a week, 3 days, a month before us. Fact still remains, it has to come to us. And we have to be able to hear what's going on. And that is as it relates to receiving information, to vote upon, to speak upon. I will say again though, when you have submissions like Senator Adams, and you want something in place by the 31st of July, and he makes the kind of submission he made this afternoon, there's a problem, because you do not know if you need to go back to the drawing board and amend that which you sent us to approve to make it better. When you do things like this, you're not leaving room for things to be improved or to be better. That is also flawed. So as you gallop, as QC girls do, with their agenda and getting things done properly, I get it. But there's a way of doing it. It has to be done properly. And it has to be that we are not a part of an environment, excuse me, that there's no substance. This is not a chamber of persons that don't have substance. That is what I would like to say as it relates to these two bills, sir. I'm obliged to you.
I just want to say, though, before we hear Senator Walcott, that the observations made by Senators Franklin and Tate should not go on. And I'm sure that the leader of government business here and the clerks will hear and take note. There are times when, are we being heard? There are times when government will need to proceed with dispatch, and we may be given short notice. But I hope that that will be the exception rather than the rule. You cannot get the best out of the senators, out of this chamber, as it was visionary chamber if we are not given adequate notice. I myself was concerned about the short notice, but I take the point made by Senator Walcott that it was important that we move with some dispatch on the matters before us. But I really hope that it will be the exception and not the norm. And I do not know that there might not have been a more efficient way of getting hold of senators rather than said it was put on the website on Friday. A lot of people leave work early on Friday, might not have checked their website at work, might not have known anything about it over the weekend at home, and in those circumstances perhaps the clerks can take the home telephone number and try to reach the senators. I really hope that what is happening today will not become the norm, and that the very exceptional circumstances in which we have to be debating matters of which we've had a day's notice or less notice. It might have been Friday. A lot of people didn't see it until this morning or yesterday. That's the only comment that I have to make at this stage. I recognize Senator Wall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank all honorable senators for their contributions, and I beg to move that the Central Bank of Barbados bill be read a second time.
We move that the Central Bank of Barbados bill be read a second time. All honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
As we move, that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for the purpose of further considering this bill. All those in favor? Aye. Say aye. I now remove myself.
Not a word. Really? See what there? Not a word. Just ignore.
So you didn't know what she said?
You know it.
Yeah, but she was very be truthful.
She has. But what can I do?
I don't.
I don't.
You ready, Joe? You ready?
They're ready.
The Senate is now in committee. Clause 1.
Chairman, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. All honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honorable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Those against, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg that you now report to His Honor. I did this already.
Yes,
I did this. here? You have the report here. Yeah, he's coming. So when we going to do it?
The chairman has reported to me the passage of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
It's been moved that this bill be now read a third time. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and be cited as the Central Bank of Barbados Amendment Act 2018.
It has been moved that the bill be now passed and be so cited. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. I think the ayes have it.
Order on the throne, sir. In the name of the Honourable Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Financial Management and Audit Amendment Bill 2018.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a second time.
It has been moved that this bill be now read a second time. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
It has been moved that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for the further consideration of this bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. I think the ayes have it.
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 2 stand part.
The question is that Clause 2 stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that Clause 3 stand part.
The question is that Clause 3 stand part. Honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honour the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to the Honourable President the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Passes of one bill in committee. The chairman has reported to me the passage of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I do now beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Now been moved that the bill be read a third time. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Financial Management and Audit Amendment Act 2018.
It's been moved that the bill is now passed and be so cited. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. I think the ayes have it. In the shape of the evening, it looks like we can get through business. 7.315, we should tell them about, you know.
You have to recommit.
Mr. President, we would recommit to introduction of bills.
Which bill is?
Yeah, you wrote the bill that you know about. You know what are you doing now?
I don't know what it is, but it needs a sanitation bill. And they didn't send me the sanitation bill, so we have to revert to notices. When I speak about this, then I ask that we read, give notice, and then I have to move that we read the first thing.
So we have to move to an item that we long past. We have to revert to notices.
Yeah. So I should.
So we recommit it?
This morning.
We recommit it? We commit to notices?
Do I understand that we have to revisit notices? What's the date of revisiting notices? Is that not the proper thing to do, revisit notices?
We have to do both together. If you're ready, water shorty, you see that you have to give a right to sanitation to collect the money. We just can't do it now. Just can't do it now. Just this troublesome thing. You say you saw it.
Your name.
Mr. President, recommittal of introduction of bills.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice and of the Sanitation Service Authority Amendment Bill 2018, and ask that it be read a first time.
What do you name it? We have just revisited the item of notices, and Senator Walcott has moved that there be now the first reading of the Sanitation Service Authority Amendment Bill 2018. All those in favor of the first reading, please say aye. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, recommittal of motions relating to the business or sittings of the Senate and moved by Minister.
Mr. Clerk, I'm not too sure I heard you clearly or at all.
Committal of motions relating to the business or sittings of the Senate and moved by Minister.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Standing Order 22-1 be suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
Yes, sir.
It has been moved that this Standing Order
22-1.
22 on be suspended for the balance of the day's sitting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Yes, Chief.
Those against? I think the ayes have it. Standing order is now suspended.
I could do it too.
Order number 4, sir. In the name of the Honourable Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Barbados Water Authority Amendment Bill 2018.
Mr. President, as I rise to speak on this bill, I'm almost tempted to request a cognate debate again, seeing as how the Water Authority Bill is directly related to the Sanitation Authority Bill, which was just received by honorable members of this chamber. However, I do detect that there might be some objection to that on the basis of the late notice of this bill. And Mr. President, I think you're aware that this morning I specifically asked about this bill, how in terms of the Sanitation Authority, because the bill speaks to giving the Water Authority the ability to collect fees on behalf of the Sanitation Authority, but certainly there was not the concomitant amendment to the Sanitation Services Authority Act to allow it to receive those funds. However, Mr. President, I will press on and not request your indulgence again. I think that, and I'm not going to belabor the point this evening, Mr. President. I believe all Barbadians, all members in this honorable chamber understand the issues with which the government is faced in terms of the Barbados Water Authority, in terms of the Sanitation Services Authority. In terms of the Sanitation Services Authority, the issues are clear. Throughout Barbados, there are concerns about the lack of adequate garbage collection. And we've heard this going on for a number of years. We've heard about the need to have garbage trucks. We know that in Barbados you need at least 40 trucks to provide adequate collection of garbage across Barbados, sometimes twice a week. And I know that in the good old days, Sanitation Services Authority boasted of having collection sometimes 3 times a week, and indeed in some parts of the city every day. This regrettably has become a thing of the past, and we've heard about their need for garbage trucks for a number of years. I'm not going to be political this evening. The reality is there. This need has been there for several years, and we've had promises and promises and promises. And certainly with the NSRL, there was the hope that these funds were going to be used to purchase these needed garbage trucks. That has not happened. The issue of the landfill management and maintenance, again, we've had issues at the landfill at Vaucluse in terms of the heavy-duty equipment that is required, in terms of covering and providing, at the end of every day, covering the material that is disposed there. Again, it was a lack of funds in behalf of the Sanitation Services Authority to be in a position to purchase this equipment. I know some honorable members would have recognized from the Auditor General's report the concern that he expressed vis-a-vis rental of the heavy-duty equipment over a period of time when it perhaps could have purchased a number of these individual compactors that were necessary. So we have those issues in terms of the actual collection of garbage. Government entered an agreement with SBRC in 2009 in terms of the first steps in recycling of garbage within Barbados. It was a concept that was supported from the previous government. We felt that it was time for us in Barbados to move towards separation of waste, either at source or on the point of delivery. And in the circumstances, it was agreed that SBRC would establish this unit at Vaucluse in St. Thomas, who I believe the Honourable Senator who is looking at me is very familiar with. It was also anticipated that you would have separation there and that garbage would go into its various streams. And of course that the organics would have been separated and there would have been a composting facility which was supposed to be constructed. This is 9 years later, that has not been done. So there are issues there also as regard SBRC in terms of the payments, in terms of the contractual arrangement. So you have the Sanitation Services Authority facing these issues. Shortage of trucks, inability to service the dump appropriately and efficiently, and the matter is tied up with SBRC. In terms of the Water Authority, they have a purpose, basically, to supply potable water across Barbados, and indeed the responsibility for sewage treatment plants within this island. Again, all members in this chamber, as well as unfortunately, regrettably, persons outside of Barbados, are well familiar with the issues we face in the South Coast in terms of the malfunctioning, to put it mildly, of the South Coast sewage treatment plant, and indeed we can call it the breakdown in its management. Again, this went on for over a year, and we are now trying to come to grips and to deal with the issues there. In addition, the Bridgetown sewage treatment plant was again regrettably neglected for several years in terms of its servicing, and we've had issues there in terms of the efficiency of the plant, and it was facing an incipient collapse. Now, all of these matters within the sanitation, within the water, need resources, financial resources. And the government, as we all know, is on the strain in terms of its fiscal mechanism. We don't have that fiscal space that you need. The economists call it, I'm not one. And in these circumstances, it was absolutely necessary that the government find a way to at least alleviate these issues, recognizing the problems, the concerns of the citizens of Barbados, which I said governments are elected for, to look after the citizens and the welfare. And in these circumstances, it was decided at the last budget speech that a levy would be introduced. The Prime Minister, on the June 11th, made these budgetary proposals. Inter alia, she speak about a new garbage and sewage contribution levy through the Barbados Water Authority bills, and that households will pay the equivalent of $1.50 per day. $1.50 per day in terms towards the collection of their garbage, so that there will be a fee of $45 in addition to what they pay for Water Authority, for their water. People might ask, why Water Authority? Why Why are they using water bills? I would say, in easiest terms, is that it will give you an accurate reflection of the number of households. Perhaps a fairly accurate, because I take it that there are a number of households in Barbados at this point in time who have access to water, who are not necessarily billed for whatever reason. I think members in the chamber can work out that in terms of the issues we've had, in persons being connected in very creative manners and ways to the distribution network. But that is as it is. In addition, it was proposed that out of this $1.50, $1.25 would go to the Sanitation Services Authority to defray the expense in terms of collection of garbage, and that 25 cents would be retained by the Barbados Water Authority in terms of sewage treatment and the various sewage treatment plants. In the case of commercial entities, it was felt that the contribution would be 50% of their water bill, with half of that amount going to sanitation and the other half in terms of the Barbados Water Authority to offset the operational costs of its sewage systems. We felt that it was unfair for only those persons connected to the South Coast and the Bridgetown sewage treatment plant to pay a sewage fee, which they currently do, well recognizing that this is protecting the greater good of all of Barbados in terms of its environment. And so, Mr. President, it brought us to this bill, which is being proposed this evening. In terms of the bill, it speaks to, obviously I spoke at the beginning that you need amendments to both the Barbados Water Authority Act and also the Sanitation Services Authority Act. And the principal amendments in this act, and that is the Water Authority, would be to allow the Water Authority to collect monies on behalf of any company, statutory corporation, this is looking ahead, business or other commercial entity, and to transfer those funds to these entities. The second area we're looking at in terms of the amendments, granting the Barbados Water Authority the right to impose garbage and sewage contribution levies. In addition, the amendment looks at allowing the Barbados Water Authority to accrue funds from garbage and sewage contribution levy in addition to its other sources of funding. The amendments also provide for the specific rates of the garbage and sewage contribution levy, and these are to be displayed as separate items on the water bills. It makes provision for the collection of garbage and sewage contribution levy where the bills are not paid in full and how the portions should be shared. It makes also provision for the establishment of a garbage and sewage contribution relief board, which would hear applications from relief for persons who are concerned that they are unable to afford these additional charges for whatever reason. And the bill also speaks in terms of the constitution of this relief board and how, in terms of the selection process for persons to serve on the board. Obviously, concomitantly, the Sanitation Services Authority Act will have to be amended so that to allow that monies collected by the Barbados Water Authority to be transferred to the Sanitation Services Authority, as this is not, the Sanitation Services Authority at this point in time does not speak to it receiving funds from other entities within government. Mr. President, as I believe that I have briefly outlined the main issues in terms of this amendment to the Barbados Water Authority Act. And indeed, I know that there are many members who may be eager to embark on a debate into the global management of solid waste in Barbados. But I dare say that I know that there will be opportunities for that in the not too distant future. Mr. President, with these few words, I'm obliged to you, and I beg that that the Barbados Water Authority, Barbados Water Authority Amendment Act be read a second time, as amended, because I remember some amendments were distributed earlier at the beginning of today's session. Honourable members, thank you, Mr. Amendment bill be read a second time. Thank you, Mr. President, and my word be. Mr. President, this
has been moved that the Barbados Water Authority Amendment Act be read a second bill. Bill be read a second time, sorry.
as amended.
As amended. Mr. Clark, do we have it wrong or right?
Water 30 amendment bill. Yeah, that's what you said.
The clerk has just confirmed that the question put was the correct question. That the Barbados Water Authority Amendment Bill be read a second time.
It came here.
Mr. President,
Has already amended.
this Senate just heard Senator Tate speak. And I thought that having heard her speak, that the government would have at least consider its ways and be wise. But we are behaving as though she said not a word. That whatever she said went through the ears of the government, went one ear and through the next. Because we are even making it worse than she was complaining about. We had notice of the bills on Friday by email. I saw it, as I said, I saw it on Saturday night. But we got one here that said notice of this bill was given on the 30th of July. When is that again? Oh, that's today. You see? Good there. We can't be serious, sir. No.
Mr. President, on a point of order, we are dealing with order number 4. They're dealing with the Barbados Water Authority. That is the matter that I'm dealing with right now. I was clear at the beginning, Mr. President, in terms of saying I was tempted to ask for a cognate debate, but I recognize the difficulties I might meet. We are dealing with the Barbados Water Authority Bill, Amendment Bill, which all honourable members said in unison that they came here this morning to debate at 11 a.m. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, the Honourable Leader of Government Business spoke to the Sanitation Amendment Bill, and he opened the door for me to come through. And I came through. Right?
Squeezing through.
You know, he spoke to it. I am only responding to what he said. I only feel that is fair.
Yeah, I love you, please.
So, but I will hold for that for a little bit, because I think the point was made by, I can't put it better than Senator put it earlier, so I'm not even going to try. She was clear, and I think everybody understood what she was saying. But understanding what she was saying and doing it, or complying, or even seeking to accommodate us, doesn't seem to matter to the government. This bill, is an example of creating bodies, reinventing the wheel, so to speak. This is absolutely unnecessary, You remember years ago, the government put in place a Rural Development Commission and a
Urban Development Commission. Those two commissions were doing things that were being done by central government. There was no need for them. You know, there was absolutely no need for them. But they were duplicating processes that we had all over the place. It looked good to give somebody a job to be a director and somebody all kind of stuff, you know that. But the welfare department was doing a lot of what urban was doing, a lot of what rural was doing. There was a poverty alleviation unit in central government that was doing the same thing. And now we come back and doing it all over again, even though we are talking about rationalizing those departments, getting rid of some of them because they weren't necessary. And you're now speaking to establishing this appeals board. Welfare department does mean testing. So you know, they know, and they're experts at it. That's what they were trained to do. They went and do all this self-studying, they have all the experience that you need. They don't need to go and invent now some board to come and tell them, because it can look funny, you know, if somebody who didn't vote for the government don't get relief, you know. So let us put it beyond that kind of criticism by allowing the welfare department to do what it was set up to do. We don't need a board to look and tell people if a person needs relief for this thing. As a matter of fact, I don't even think that we should have the tax at all. Because we just, you see, we just got rid of some taxes. If you know that you needed this tax, why get rid of one? The way I spoke about it earlier, smoke and mirrors. You gave the impression that you were doing it because it was popular. You know, people, oh, we can get rid of NSRL. But then you go on now and put on something else. If the NSRL, you say it was a bad tax, this is even worse. But instead of getting rid of all 10%, and you needed 4% for this, you could have went another 6%. And you didn't have to have a new tax, a new sewage levy and all kind of stuff. I have difficulties with anybody else putting their hand on government money, keep it and collecting it and storing it. We make exceptions for national insurance because of the peculiar nature of national insurance. It's a pension and a social security stuff. And we don't really want, every time you have to get a claim, you've got to go through Parliament to get a sickness claim. So I can understand that. But why do you need to have sanitation, the Water Authority collect as a collection agency of government revenue? Government, we already pay taxes to government. Put it in consolidated fund. When you want some, come here and we vote and get some. No, but you putting these monies out here, and I am afraid because of what's been happening in the past. You know, you create these structures, but you're not going to be here all the time. You might have all the good intentions in the world. But you know what they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yes, but you could leave office. And then the next group come in, and then the minister don't elect with the next ministers that come in the next administration, whoever comes in, and they start fiddling with this money as reported in the last administration. Right? What we need to do is to use the systems that are already set in place. There's a consolidated fund. Put the money in consolidated fund. When you want some, vote and get it out. All of these little funds and little bodies collecting government money, it allows for corruption. Allows for a lot of people to get rich. It allows for the minister to call the chairman of the board and say, do X with this thing for me. You know, like, when you vote money in the estimates, goes to the government department. If you want to buy a blue car, you can't go take that money and buy a red one. You know, you have to be specific. When you give it to a statutory board, the minister qualifies statutory board and says, man, do something for me, and it happens. We need to get rid of all of that. We got too much of it. We don't want to create avenues for people to get their hands on government money. Unnecessarily so. There's no need for this bill. Mind you, there's no need for this tax. And it is an unfair tax. If the tax were on water usage, I use very little, not often.
2 gallons a week.
I use very little. So the tax on my water should be commensurate with the amount of water that I use. I don't have any swimming pool. And I heard the leader talking about people who are not connected. I know one with a swimming pool that's not connected. But I will tell you about that later. Oh, that's not mine. The government needs to rationalize its tax collection. It doesn't have to have them diversified. You remember we had welfare department, not sorry, what welfare department? We had land tax, we had a whole set of other departments, and the government said, no, we want to have Barbados Revenue Authority because we've got too many people collecting. And what we're going to do? We rationalize those, put everything on the Revenue Authority, and now we are seeking to set up a new one. We are going against what we say is wrong. We say we don't like it, it is bad, it is not the best thing to do. We don't want everybody collecting government monies. So what you do? You get somebody else to collect it. You're going to make up your mind. You're going to tell me what you want and stop trying to please everybody and think, and have a philosophy. You know? Your philosophy changes too whimsically for me. You know? Make up your mind. Decide that we're going to have a government collection agency that can collect the government money and can go in the consolidated fund. Because when this was first announced in the budget, I realized that you couldn't do it in a budget because all monies that is collected through a budgetary imposition must go to the consolidated fund. That's what this is here, you know. Because you couldn't do it and get the Water Authority. Because the Water Authority, if you look at the Provisional Collection of Taxes Act, it says a tax means all cess, whatever else you collect, paid in the consolidated fund. That must be paid in the consolidated fund. So we have to come here, pay the money in the consolidated fund. Stop this nonsense. Stop and stop putting the burden on the people who can least afford to pay these taxes. I mentioned earlier when it was speaking, I thought we weren't going to get to this, so I had to put it in, but now get it back. You have people who pay $35 for water, the minimum rate, because the water authority don't charge you less. But on that, you're going to pay a tax of $45.62. That's not fair. They either they don't use a lot of water or whatever it is they do, but you are making them pay more taxes than the service they're getting. How is that fair? How any Barbadian can think that that is fair? That's why we need to have these things debated around the country, debated in here, circulated around the place so that people will have an input. Don't let government feel that it knows all and that it can do whatever it like, and people will say, oh, we got this. No, we ain't got this. It's wrong. Stop abusing the House and Senate. You know what you want to do. Take your time and do it properly. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to be allowed to talk about the sanitation aspect of it? Or we have to debate that too, or I can... She said, I was asking Chairman, not you.
Once it's relevant, I would hear is that you speak in a
Yes,
relevant manner.
No, because the leader spoke about went in the heavy duty equipment, and they want to talk about that for eons, even before I ever had a dream of becoming a member of the Senate. That was large-scale corruption. You could have bought more tractors and excavators than you needed with the money, the $23,000 a week that was being paid to one person in Barbados to rent a piece of equipment to push back the garbage. Somebody needs locking up for that, you know. If that isn't some sort of misbehavior in public office, I don't know what is. You refuse to fix the Sanitation Service Authority equipment, refuse to buy parts, would not allow the authority, the board to function. Sit down at board meetings, come into board meetings and sit down and chair the meetings as a minister. Then you cannot buy parts. A simple part that costs $500 to put something on the road, back on the road, and instead of spending $500, you spend $23,000 a week. And people say, "Man, you're looking in shock." They're sure this happened. People behave, they don't, you know, so you're going to have to feel badly about it. I'm talking about what happened in the last administration. $23,000 a week when you could have used half of one of those thousands, $500, to buy a part for the excavator and put it up on the road that you won't go rent, I think. What is the government going to do about all this squandermania, illegal practices? I heard your leader talking about them going to the rich hunt and they're going to have, you better go up on wire and get back some of the money that these people stole from the country. We got too many people from the place coming in this parliament as paupers and end up being filthy rich. And nobody asking them where they get the money from. No, the commissioner of, well, not the commissioner of the revenue, no, the revenue commissioner under the Income Tax Act could ask them where they get the money from, and if they can't show, tax them on it. Because if you got all that kind of fancy money and you only pay a small amount of tax, you remember that's how they caught Al Capone in the United States, you know. Because he was killing people and evading taxes, they couldn't catch him for killing people, but they caught him for tax evasion and lock him up. We need to do some of that around here. There is the Proceeds of Crime Act. There is the Money Laundering and Finance and Terrorism Act, all of which have been unused to get rid of this kind of fraud and corruption. This is not a Barbados that I knew and loved. I didn't grow up, I might have one or two little fellas who've been thieving, but this was wholesale thievery. You know? And we sit down and we laugh at it now because we are poor, we can laugh at it. No. What about this anybody? I challenge you to act in the best interest of this country and lock up some people who've been stealing from the country. This $23,000 a week for instead of fixing the backhoe or whatever you call it at the landfill. You know how many same black pieces of equipment you could have bought going over several years, renting this thing, $23,000 a week, $23,000 a week, $23,000 a week. I know. You want to put money in these people's hands again? Because if I were a general manager at a statutory board and it was called upon by any minister to do something, I would say, "Minister, sorry, can't do that. Put it ready to me." No, but they went ahead and did it. So that's why I don't want to put more money in their hands, because they ain't got the kind of controls. You can put more money in their hands, the minister called and said, "I want you to buy an SUV for me." And you're going to say, "No, minister, you can go ahead and pay for it." I want transparency. I want the money going to consolidated fund. I want people to realize that the government isn't only talking the talk, you know, walking the walk and doing all the other things with it. I want this country, because everybody in Barbados talking about corruption and how bad the last lot was. And you want to tell me one of them want to lock up the body? Somebody got to lock up with this man.
I take it you were not the tractor owner.
No, sir. I don't even have a car. I drive my wife's. You know, so I don't have a problem when you have the other bill come in to declare anything, because it's going to be very short. This much. That's it. You know? I don't worry. No swimming pool. Mr. Chairman, I am not in Parliament to sit down and see wrongdoing happening in this country and say nothing about it. I was talking about it before I got here. Now that I am in a better position to talk about it, I will. We need to let the people of this country realize that we ain't scratching the body back and we ain't doing this with the body stuff. Do your job. You see wrongdoing? I remember some years ago the Attorney General of Belize. Sir, just divert a little bit, sir. The Attorney General of Belize saw a situation where a former minister had done something wrong. And he took the matter to court, misfeasance in public office. It went to the Caribbean Court of Justice eventually, because at first instance, the Chief Justice threw it out. The Court of Appeal reinstated the matter, and then it went up on appeal to the Caribbean Court of Justice. And they extended the law where public officials, by the government, by the Attorney General, can sue, bring other public officers before the court for misfeasance in public office. It happened in Belize, it can happen here. You need to do something about it. I don't want to shake my head and say yes, 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 and when they're done laughing, going on the business, I want somebody locked up. Too much corruption in this place. I wasn't proud of this place for 10 years. You have a duty, you know. I made some notes, you know. It says in the same judgment, paragraphs 26 and 27, 28, you know, be taken off of office, and when you get involved in corruption and or sidestep certain things, what the justice said is a breach of your oath, and you could be sued on it. If you can't get them by nothing else. Remember in the old days in the United States, you had to have a body in order to convict a fellow for murder. And so if you didn't have the body, you could go for murder. But the fellow would kill a fellow in the desert and ride on his horse. But horse thieving was a capital offense. So they didn't get it for murder, but they get it for horse thieving. Let me get somebody for horse thieving. If you can't get them, worry about getting them next. But we have to set the example in this country. We have to allow people to realize that we are not going to smooth over this and go along and say, well, we ain't going to trouble them and then go, no. Don't laugh. You have to protect the best interest of this country. And the best interest of this country dictates that some of them fellas should go up there and spend some time with John Nurse. John Nurse. Sorry, sir, I didn't tell you that I was going to call a name in the debate, sir, but I should have said the superintendent of prisons. You know? It's about time, sir. We're going to get serious. You know? Don't put the money in these people's hands unless we have the systems in place to police it. Right? I'm not saying that the minister responsible for sanitation in this dispensation will do what other ministers have done in the past 10 years. But I don't want to put temptation in his way. So let this money go in consolidated fund. And anything too hard, you could come in here and move an amendment, not amendment, suspension standing orders, and get out quick. If you want the money that fast. Because you don't go at any store downtown and buy a truck. So it can take a little time to get the sanitation trucks in place. So you don't need to rush this. Put it in the consolidated fund, and when you're ready for it, pay it out. Order the trucks. By all means, order the trucks. Because Where I live, I used to get 2 pickups a week. It has been reduced to 1 pickup every 4 weeks at one point in time. And I put fish in the fridge to make sure I don't stink up the place. I walk in, I hear the truck, so I come up with my fish, and the truck stop down there full and turn back. I can't take it out the can and get back in my fridge. So I want trucks. I want trucks. But I want you to do it, and I want you to do it well. I'm not going to oppose the government for the sake of opposing them. But, sir, experience has taught me that things like these boards and these other people collecting government money has worked to make people rich. I don't make people get rich, but I want you to get rich on your own team. Work hard and invest or whatever you have to do to get money. Don't stick your hand in the government's coffers. We've had too much of that. We had paupers in the last session that ended up being millionaires. People come to this parliament last session with bankrupt, couldn't pay their child maintenance, and then they ended up being millionaires. I'm not calling anybody's name. You know better. I didn't give the president any thing that I'm going to call any name, so I will have to ask for permission at another time. But in 4 short years, they became millionaires. And they can't come millionaires off of the salary. You mean blocking? No. I ain't talking about nobody. Right? In 4 short years, they became millionaires. Right? And they became millionaires because they could get their hands on funds that didn't pass through the consolidated fund. They get their hands on things where they say, well, if you give me $2.5 million, you will get tax concessions. Keep this money. I'm opposed to you taking the money in the first place. But if you must take it up, make sure it is secured someplace where it will not go astray when the body is looking. It is very easy to get the minister to call up the chairman of the board to get their hands on government money. You know, Mr. Chairman? By all means, I don't want to stop government from getting the program in place, but I wanted to make sure when they put their program in place that I don't have to pay twice. You know, because you see, when they steal this money, pardon? When they steal this money, you know, you're taxing me again. I want you to go off the TV to get my money from them, don't tax me twice. So put this money where it can be accounted for, where you can only get your hands on this money by the minister issuing a warrant to the accountant general to get hands on these funds. 2, you are becoming too free and too easy with the people's money. You collect my money to pay tax. Look, already, sorry, excuse me. That's the rule against repetition. Already, we have learned, we have seen what has been happening. Put systems in place to stop it from happening. Don't feel that your people can be more honest than the last set. I am not saying that they won't be. All I am saying is don't tempt them. Temptation is a serious thing. I know temptation. Mind you, I've avoided most of it all my life. But it is a serious thing. Do not put temptation in people's way. This bill is putting temptation in people's way. Put the money in consolidated fund. That's all I have to say on this, Mr. Chairman, and I'm much obliged to you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Next recognized, Senator Miller.
Mr. President, I rise to speak briefly on this bill. Yes. And despite what the leader of government business has said, where he does not wish us to expand too much on this matter, I wish to. The problem of garbage in this country is obvious. We can see it, and we can smell it, and we therefore need to fix it. But one has to ask, if the fix really is to buy more trucks only, and whether we do not need to think seriously about how we will recycle our garbage, and whether we want to have a facility that collects all the garbage as a unit and recycle it, or whether we need to move to something more comprehensive and have our children learn to recycle, whether we need to introduce into our schools serious recycling, whether we need to equip our sanitation service authority with trucks that will be able to deal sensibly with separation of garbage. And if we're going to have a tax on the people to bring some order back to how we deal with our garbage, we have to really think about where and how far we're going to take it. We cannot continue to throw all the garbage into one basket and ask someone else to recycle it and to separate it. We need to do it at source. On the matter of sewage, it has been obvious to all of us Barbadians that it has been flowing onto our streets for a long time, and it has been a temporary fix. And I've asked myself, if it did not flow onto the streets, would we have had a need to fix it? And the answer is yes, we still need to fix it. The vast majority of our sewage, Mr. President, is not processed in the sewage treatment plant. Every time we flush the toilet, we flush it into the ground. And Barbados is only so big. And yes, we do have zoning from 1 to 5, and we take our water, our potable water, from zone 1, and Barbados is a water scarce country. And we've supplemented our water source for years with desal water. Will we now make our water source so bad if we continue to flush the vast majority of the sewage into the ground that it will be undrinkable? And we will have to resort to total desal. Do we not need to have some serious discussion about how we will deal with what we've been doing for many, many years? Every time there's a new development, we add more holes into the ground and pour more sewage into the ground. That's a serious thought. There is legislation in place that protects the groundwater in some places. I recall that some years ago, there was discussion about protecting a valuable resource in Harrison's Cave and restricting agricultural activity so that it would not contaminate the cave and the water supply. We have evidence that years ago there was leachage of petroleum product into the groundwater in Wilcox, and it entered into the wells in Gibbons, a strong agricultural area. And we saw the consequences. And there has been compensation. We need to be in a position to protect our groundwater. And the collection of sewage and the treatment of sewage is really intricately linked to how we will deal and protect our groundwater. And the two cannot be separated. Thank you, Mr. President.
I next recognize Senator Springer.
Mr. President, I just want to state at the front end that I fully support this bill. But at the same time, I want to say that I take no kind of pleasure in supporting anything, any measure that I believe will bring even the resemblance of hardship to the good people of Barbados. I just want to make that clear. But having said that, I am aware that this country has been through 10 years. 10 years of a government that can only be characterized as neglectful. I will speak to that. Deceitful. I will also speak to that. And an administration that has mismanaged the operations at the Barbados Water Authority. I want to remind you, even at this early stage, that very early in the administration of the previous, in the previous administration, very early in their tenure, they introduced a 6% hike. 60%, yeah, hike in water rates. 60% hike. But under the administration of the former minister, even with that increase in monies and funds and the resources flowing into the water authority, he still managed somehow to neglect and the maintenance of the authority, of the equipment up there. And the member from the other side, the honourable member, the leader of opposition business, he made the point that he believed this bill, he said, I think he said unnecessary, and the tax even more so, or worse than that. I'm paraphrasing. But I want to remind this honourable chamber, and I will remind this honourable chamber each and every time that the words Barbados Water Authority are uttered in here about the hardship that persons in the north endured, persons including myself, endured under the previous administration as a result of the mismanagement and the neglect at the Barbados Water Authority. And that too. But those are your words, not mine. I will remind this honourable chamber, as a person living in the north of this country in 2015. 2015, persons living in Orange Hill, places like White Hill and Belle Plaine, places that I frequent. And during the day and weekends.
You won't tell us too much.
Just saying. The hardship, the humiliation that persons living in these areas, other parts of the north too, but those are names that come to my mind freely. Yes, persons having to bathe in a pan, in a basin. Persons having to go to the standpipe. Now, the leader from the other side, he made the point that this Barbados that he lives in now is not the Barbados that he knows and loves. Let me tell you something. The Barbados of 2015, as much as I may be a little younger than you, it was not a Barbados that I recognize. We had to walk with 2 buckets to a standpipe, not even a standpipe, not even a real standpipe, to a tank. A tank, or run behind a truck, or a vac, as some people call it, run behind a water truck to get water. And if where you live was in a flat area, and the truck, he said, no, we may have to park in an elevated area so the water could run down. You had to walk to wherever that truck stopped, and then try back with 2 buckets of water. And you had a big strong man like me, 2 buckets. You mean sometimes 1 bucket. But it was, the point I'm trying to make, it was difficult, it was humiliating. And I made the point, I mentioned it here before, that I had visitors coming from overseas, so that even added another layer to the humiliation. But that's what we endured in the north under the previous administration. And for you to come into this honourable chamber and say that the tax is not necessary. No, it's necessary because we need to fix those kinds of problems so those things would never occur in Barbados again. We need to fix the system. And of course, I wanted to, at the point in time, we wanted persons in the north wanted that particular crisis to be seen as a national crisis. Now, I'm sure that it wasn't. Sorry, I'm sure that it wasn't treated. Maybe in some people's view, it wasn't treated as a national crisis. I'm not slighted by it, but we would have wanted that at the time. But then came Mr. President, the crisis in the South, which I think brings out the another layer of neglect, but also the deceit that I want to speak to. Because I remember, my memory serves me right, I think it was on December 8th, back in 2016, that I believe two ministers, they would have, a bath and contaminated water. Yeah, just trying to deceive the people of Barbados. I get to that. Now, I may make the point quickly that in recent weeks, I've met someone who I believe to be closely related to one of those ministers. I intend to befriend that person. Are we going to have a conversation about that particular day? We're going to have that conversation. It is something in the near future. I am not naming names, but I'm saying that I met a young man who I believe to be a close relative of one of those ministers, and I intend to befriend that young man, and we're going to have a conversation with me and that young man about that. But that's besides the point. What I'm trying to make is that we have seen with our own eyes, and we've seen the result of neglect. And we've seen what can happen if the authority remains bankrupt. We see that there's a need for money. Millions of dollars were spent in the initial stages of trying to fix that crisis. We know that a pump was bought. We know that the pump lasted, what, a few weeks? If so many, few days? I stand corrected. A few weeks. It didn't last very long. That's the point I'm trying to make. It didn't last very long. Millions of dollars gone down the drain. And the problem remained. Sewage remained on the street. We cannot have these things happening in our country. The Barbados Water Authority needs funding, needs resources, as was mentioned by Senator, by the Honourable Senator Walker before. That needs resources. The tax is necessary. It is extremely necessary. And what makes that crisis on the South Coast even worse was when those advisories were issued, if you recall, by the UK, followed by the US, and then by Canada, and then by Germany. I've never heard of any travel advisory by issue, against Barbados by Germany. Hardly ever heard of anyone by Canada. But they saw what was going on in Barbados. They felt that for our people to come to this country, they would be coming at their own risk. And we had a situation in this country where we were putting tourists at risk, we were putting businesses at risk, we were putting, even more importantly, we were putting the residents at risk. And we cannot sit down and say now, as the leader of opposition business said, that this tax is not necessary while these things remain unfixed, because I know there's been a temporary fix. And I'm impressed at the speed at which the new minister has treated to these matters. I have not been there lately. I avoided that place at the plague. I avoided that area, but I have not heard of any. Nor have I seen any. Any evidence of this sewage flowing on the street. I think that has been capped. Yeah, fantastic work by the minister. All right, on the 25th. Fantastic. Right? I'm not seeing it, but I know that the problem is still there. I know that the plant is still operating at a capacity that it should not be operating at. But I know in order to build up the capacity of that plant, you're going to need resources, you're going to need money, you're going to need funds. And to say that the tax is unnecessary, it's to tell me that you would rather see a situation like that occur again in Barbados. And I don't want to believe that.
A point of order, Mr. Chairman. I have allowed the senator to misrepresent me too many times. But I said, and I want him to remember carefully, that I'm saying get money from consolidated funds. the way you're doing it was not necessary. You need money. You say, yeah, you need money. Everybody needs money. But the way that you are doing it is unnecessary. You tax the people, put money on if you want to take it out. That's what we're saying. I'm not saying that water authority don't need money. You remember the 60% you talk about? That was collected illegally. I had a lot of money and it disappeared. So I understand I had money.
Your clarification is noted, sir.
Thank you.
Please proceed.
I am relatively certain that at some point the honourable member did say that the tax was. Yeah, I'm going to move on. Second, then I move on. Now, the fact of the matter is, in order for the BWA to address the issues that existed and some that still exist, there's going to be a significant need for funds and expertise too. We're going to need funds and some expertise to address this matter. So there's no getting around the tax. I will agree to some point that, you know, we would rather not have the taxes, but taxes are necessary. And we can all agree that taxes are necessary. But I'm being very careful how I assign what I said about what the member on the other side said. But I think he said that the tax was not fair, or words to that effect. Yes, I think he said words to that effect. It was not a fair tax. He said something along the lines of a person is paying $35 as a minimum payment and then impose $42 or something to that effect. Yeah, yes, right. Right. Yes, I was listening. It was entertaining. I enjoyed it. I'm going to be honest. I enjoyed his submission. But he said that. I understand that. But when I went through the bill, I noticed reference being made to a relief board. Yes, a relief board, which speaks to and I spoke about it in this honourable chamber a few weeks ago about a caring government, a government that is in tune with the people, understands the people. And we know that everybody in Barbados will not be able to pay this tax. We know that. We understand there are persons who can hardly pay the water bill now as we stand. We understand there are people who are disabled, people living on welfare. You understand? We understand that. We are aware of that. The government is aware of that. And I believe that was his thinking when the idea of a relief board was incorporated into this bill. Because they understood, as we here should understand, that everyone would not be able to pay the bill, but we understand that we will have to, some persons may need relief. Some persons may need to be exempted from this particular tax. And there are persons like that. We have the disabled among us. We have other persons who, for some reason, are unable, whether through bankruptcy or any means that may not be of their own making, will be unable to pay this tax. And there are provisions to treat to that. To say the tax is unfair speaks to, I don't want to cast aspersions on, but it speaks to the fact that you have not read or you have not perused the bill as it maybe should have. But it's there.
For them, Mr. Chairman, he wasn't listening, you know. I said that we don't need that board. I spoke to that board. I said we have the welfare department that is trained to do what you want the board to do. I spoke to it. He wasn't listening good, you know.
Apologies. But I will continue. I will continue. But it speaks to the thinking of the government. You understand that we have to help those among us who may be in no position to pay the tax. Yeah, the misfortunate among us. All right. But as I close, I just want to make
and reemphasize the point that under the last administration, this country was taken to a place where we hope that we would never, ever, ever, ever be taken again. This country was brought to its knees in a way that I don't believe a lot of Barbadians can comprehend. When we look back at this period 2015, when we look back at this period 2008, but more specifically for this particular bill, 2015, 2016, 2017, and the early part, very early part of 2018, you know, you have to wonder what was going on in this country, what was going on at the Barbados Water Authority, because it appeared that everything had stalled. No one had taken any interest in the maintenance of the equipment. And having said that, let me just go back. I was going to wrap up, but let me just reverse. It was reported by the technocrats, mind you, of the Barbados Water Authority back in 2016 that the equipment was not being serviced as it should. There were blockages, soap, toilet paper, all these things. Things like that, yeah. Toilet paper, towels, other things, diapers, things that were not supposed to be in the system were in the system. These things were reported. And you would think that with this information that persons would have acted to treat to the problem. Never did. Didn't move a finger to address the problem. Just kept on just kicking the ball down the road and hope that the problem would disappear. But the problem is not going to disappear. And we've seen now that the problem, apart from not disappearing, the problem exploded. And now we have to ensure, as I close, that the problem never explodes again, that we keep the problem capped. So with those few words, I just want to fully associate myself with the government side, fully support this bill, see the necessary, so necessary this bill is, and reassure my support for the bill. I thank you.
Senator Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I sit along with the other members, independent members of the Senate. And all joking aside, I think that we need to remember where we are and whose business we are here conducting. There is a sense almost of a certain triviality to matters which are being discussed, which I take reproach with. We are the upper house, we are not the other place. And we need to remember the audience of who we are speaking for and why we are here. Following on from the comments made by my colleague, Senator Tate, it bears repeating. Our purpose is not here to perform. We are not here seeking accolades. We are not here seeking attention. We are here debating the people's legislation and offering our insight. There is ample time to seek out the audience that we crave and getting those type of points across, but not in this body. And that's the first thing I would like to be put on the record, sir. I want to join with my colleagues in the form of Senator Tate and Senator Franklin in expressing concern with the periods being given for the notice of the legislation. I saw an ad run in the paper for the new water bill before the legislation was passed in relation to the new water bill. Either that means that certain ministers should be commended for their efficiency, or it means that as is used to be said, the cart might be before the horse. but it bears repeating the concern echoed by both Senator Tate and Senator Franklin that when we're galloping, let's make sure that we are securely harnessed. So let's get the legislation out there first, and then we can run the notices. Second point, or third point I want to make is the purpose of the levy is undoubtedly recognized. Some may even say that it may be a recognition of the attempts by the previous administration in recognizing the necessity for the refinement of the process for funding for the sewage and water needs of the population of Barbados. The point is it needs to be done, and as independent senators, we will support you in that general application. Now, that being said, generally, I would like to draw, Mr. President, as well as the leader of government business, to Section 25B, as laid out with regard to the application for relief. And I think that
25E?
25B. And I think, again, I need to chastise members of this House for making statements in relation to ability to pay. It is not a joking matter, because there are families in this country who earn $250 a week. And for us to sit down here and for comments to be flying as to who cannot pay, I think is extremely disrespectful. And aside from those families having to now find additional money, and that is not what my concern relates to, it is the legislature which is set out at 25B. It is my suggestion that this legislation could be improved and even wider to give the board wider powers, because it would be impossible for legislative draftsmen, and believe it or not, attorneys are not infallible, to capture all scenarios in which a need for relief would arise. In the current draft, which is in the bill, it states, where the domestic consumer is in need by reason of his being prevented by some disability, so that's one, you are prevented by a disability from earning a living. So that's the first category. You will have a disability, you cannot earn a living. And then we see the alternative, or who has insufficient resources to maintain himself. And of course, the first thing is, why is that limited just to himself and not to his family? And is unable to find work. In other words, if you have a job, you are not allowed to apply for relief the way this legislation is drafted. And lawyers will dissect this 6 weeks from Sunday in trying to come about as to what the meaning is. So rather than bothering the courts with having to go to a purposive approach of interpretation, we can take the time now to set out clearly the categories which relief would be allowed. The second point I would like to make is that you can also include within 25B1, a catch-all phrase, something similar to the lines as we lawyers like to see where the courts say, or for any such other reason as deemed necessary or relevant by the relief board, so as to allow consideration of the vagaries of life. Because there's so many things that could happen, so many tragedies that could befall a household or an individual, that certainly for the context of this legislation, our recommendation, or my recommendation would be, and I think it will be adopted by my colleagues on the independent side, that this 25B be expanded. And this is something we can get into when we get to the other part of these proceedings. So just to repeat, when you read 25B1A, it reads, where the domestic consumer is in need by reason of his being prevented by some disability from earning a living. And then there's the alternative, which is or, which carries a disjunctive interpretation. So maybe that could be changed to and or. Who has insufficient resources to maintain himself. Again, why is this limited to the plural and not the family if there is one which exists? And is unable to find work. By including that provision, you therefore restrict persons who have work but now cannot afford to pay the increase in the bill. So it is recommended that this clause be looked at, and if the intention is to provide the relief sought, that it be given wider, more robust wording. Finally, Mr. President, I want to fire a shot across the bow. There are 3 children that I know of parliamentarians in this body. And I would urge caution, lest we forget the Barbados that we know and love that we refer to. I certainly have benefited from guidance from both sides of the political family. And I think all of us can say the same. And I would hope that we as representatives would hope that if our children choose, or if we're so blessed with children, to follow on this path, that they will be given a certain courtesy if they choose to take up the mantle. And that we are careful in certain representations that we make, because the Barbados that we know and love, everyone is judged on their own merits. With that, Mr. President, that's my contribution.
Recognize Senator Sands.
Sorry, 4. Sorry, Mr. President, 4. 4 children. No, 3. Sorry. I was thinking Desmond had.
Thank you, Deputy President. Good afternoon, Honourable Senate. I rise this afternoon in support of this Barbados Water Authority Amendment Bill, which seeks to make provisions for the charging and collection of a garbage and sewage contribution levy. Now, straight off the bat, the average person dislikes any conversation in respect of taxes or levies. That's an unfavorable fact. They do not like to hear or have conversations about taxes or levies. And I share and understand those sentiments of those persons. However, the issue before us is that these persons, for the last 10 years, are suffering from post-traumatic stress. They're suffering from the fact that for the last 10 years, they have been living under a tax-on-tax government. That sole purpose was to burden people by sucking funds from taxpayers and misusing the money that was generated. Now I say to you this afternoon that the levy that we are seeking to impose this afternoon, the Barbados Labour Party-led government will not have the same face of the previous administration. The previous administration suffered from an implementation deficit. They simply could not execute that which they intended to do. That is the problem that this country faces. High and Mighty talks about different legislations, different taxes, and different levies, but we were never able to reap the benefits that they said we were intended to receive. Now, this bill intends to generate revenue for 2 purposes: for the purchase of trucks and for the upgrade and maintenance of the sewage system. Now, before honorable members of the Senate and persons of the public cast any issues or dismiss this levy just because of the name, I ask that we examine the history and create a context for which this levy is required. Now, I propose that we look in the last 10 periods, in the last 10 years. And after we have done that, maybe then with the information that we've gathered, we can then understand the objective that is being sought to be executed by the Barbados Labour Party-led government. Now, Barbados is 166 square miles. It has a population of about 270,000 people. And that does not include during high time when we have a significant amount of tourists who are coming in who are not accounted for any population count. So in other words, Barbados will have 270 plus. And if you're at high tide like crop over, we might very well have over 300,000 people here. Now, each of those persons who reside and visit this country generate waste, human waste. On top of that human waste, there's also garbage that is piled up by these same said persons. So on any given day, we have approximately 300,000 people generating waste throughout this country. Now, in order to manage this waste and garbage that is being piled up in this country, they need to have two main functions working: the sewage system and the garbage collection. Those two functions must be working in order to manage the waste that is generated from people. Now, in respect to the garbage collection, in the last 10 years, the last administration, as I understand it, had 16 trucks at their disposal. And of those 16 trucks, on any given day, all 16 were not prepared and ready to go and work. So despite we mentioned we got 16 trucks available, when we come into work, 2 of those trucks might be down, leaving us with 14 trucks to manage the width and breadth of this country. That is the dilemma that Barbados was faced with for the last 10 years in this country. Managing the waste of a population with between 10 and 16 trucks on a good day. Now, this country did not, and to this day, does not have the proper resources at the Sanitation Service Authority to manage the issues that I have just highlighted to you. And as a result, we saw a massive pileup of garbage throughout this country. You could have driven along the south coast. You would see garbage upon garbage piled up at the different hotel depositories for garbage. Residents in Vauxhall, residents in Silver Hill, Edie Village, Elizabeth Park, complained of not having their garbage collected for over 14 days. Households that having 5 and 6 people continue to generate waste. And for 14 days, not a bag was moved from their residence. So essentially, Barbados became a playground to rodents. That's a habitat for disaster. We saw the famous Ratley all over social media. He get boisterous and decide he want to be a public figure. Now, the previous administration, in their effort to manage this garbage issue, decided that they would enter into a relationship arrangement with the private haulers in Barbados. Now, I commend them. I mean, we're faced with the issue, let's try to resolve it. They entered into discourse with the private haulers, and they came to an arrangement where the private haulers would share a bulk of the burden and try to help alleviate the garbage issue. Now, while we could arguably say that that in itself did alleviate some of the issues that we were facing, it can also be said that in getting the assistance, it created an exorbitant cost on the taxpayer's pocket. Now, imagine that the previous administration thought that it was financially prudent to rent a tractor for $36,000 a week. $36,000 a week. Now, I can speak subject to correction because I heard the Honourable member mention 23,000. So I don't know which of the figures is correct, but I know the figure was in excess of $20,000 that was being paid for tractors on a weekly basis. Now, I understand that some of the cost of these tractors, if we had purchased it outright, would have essentially, it would have taken us approximately 18 months of rental payments to pay for one of these tractors that we were renting for in excess of $20,000 a month. And I understand that the relationship that we have with the entity that we were paying that rental fee exceeded the 18-month period. So what that means is that we could have bought that tractor ourselves, but instead, we had an arrangement where somebody is continued to be enriched by receiving the bulk of the taxpayers' monies and renting a tractor when we could have very well just bought it ourselves. That is the type of financial mismanagement that has occurred under the last administration. Now, the government, this current government, while in opposition, recognized and identified the problems as it related to the garbage issue. And in its manifesto determined that one of the first things it would do when it got into power, if it got into power, was to rectify the issue. The issue being address the lack of resources that are plaguing the Sanitation Service Authority. Well, the Barbados Labour Party is now in government. And the order of today is to ensure that the promise made by the Prime Minister is kept. That is why this levy is important today. This levy ensures that the money that is generated from it can help cushion our financial situation and enable us to buy a fleet of trucks which will ensure that Barbados will no longer have to say, I've waited 14 days for my garbage to be collected. For tourists to come into this country and pass along the coast road and want to know why we are encouraging rats to also visit this country. That is what this levy is seeking to do. Beautify Barbados. That is the indirect impact of this levy. So apart from the garbage being taken out and we having new trucks, we can also indirectly be beautifying this country. Now, by improving the efficiency of the SSA, as I said, we will beautify this country. Now, if I can draw your attention to the sewage issue, that aspect of the levy. Barbados generates a significant amount of foreign reserves from tourism. Now, while the word sewage may not directly be linked to tourism, sewage can still have an indirect impact on it. The sewage crisis manifested itself in the heart of our tourist belt in the South Coast, an area that generates significant amounts of tourist activity and attractions, and it consists of a number of businesses. We're talking about restaurants, guest houses, vendors, stores, supermarkets, to name a few. And all of these businesses are strategically placed on this belt to ensure that they can all get the foreign reserves that is coming in from the tourists visiting this country. Now, if I understand that these businesses are here for strategic purposes, and I believe that the way that Barbados understands that these businesses were placed here for strategic purposes, then you might Thank you, Mr. President. As I was saying, if we understand that these businesses were placed here for strategic purposes, with that being in mind, you may understand my confusion when I read an article which suggested that the Democratic Labour Party was aware that of the problems that was plaguing the sewage system well in advance of it manifesting itself onto the streets of Barbados. I also read in that same article that persons had discoursed with the government and offered to repair the faulty diffusers and also offered to construct new sewage systems for this country. And the Democratic Labour Party-led government refused those offers. Now, clearly the Democratic Labour Party government did not appreciate the magnitude of the sewage problem that we were facing. And as a result of their inaction and negligence, we suffered a national crisis right here on the south coast of Barbados. And it had a detrimental impact on a number of sectors. We're talking about health, tourism, and business, just to name a few. I saw travel advisories that were issued by foreign ministries of many countries, basically advising their travelers to avoid the South Coast, the tourist belt, the foreign reserve generator, to don't go down there, that there's sewage in the sea, don't go in our beaches. Those are some of the things that were put in the media, in international media, about this country. And the buck did not stop there. The sewage issue was so devastating that if you took a quick search on the TripAdvisor, you can do it now, I believe it's still there. If you take a quick search on TripAdvisor, you would see a number of comments and discourse with other tourists and potential tourists basically egging on each other about why they should not come to Barbados. It's a sewage issue. And a sewage issue is deterring persons from coming to this country, something that we could have avoided. I actually took off one of the quotes, and I wanted to read it for this Honourable Senate. So bear with me. One of the visitors wrote on the website, "I am staying on the South Coast. The situation is horrible. The odor is nauseating. 5 out of 6 of us had gastroenteritis in the last few days. I am never returning to Barbados." This is a sewage problem that could have been prevented. But this negligent government allowed this to happen. Imagine that a comment like that is being said about Barbados, a country that prides itself on punching above its weight, a country that markets itself as a gem of the Caribbean, a country that thrives on tourism. We have tourists saying that they're not coming here because of poor tourist product or because of poor public relations or people just aren't nice. They're coming here because of a problem that we could have fixed immediately, sewage. That is the comments that we are seeing on the international media about this country. Simple comments like that destroy the hard work that we have done to transform this country to a level of excellence. The previous administration should be shamed because this falls squarely at their feet. Now, as a result of their abuse of the public purse, this country is left with no money and a multitude of problems that require money to rectify. Now, notwithstanding this mammoth issue that this current government has inherited, I must join my colleague, Senator Springer, in commending Minister Abrams and his team, because from the time they came into office, I was then abreast of the information as it relates to the Bridgetown sewage plants. I don't know if many of you would have saw the images going around on social media, but it would have appeared. I saw the memes. That's a term that young people use now. The memes that was trending on social media where we were suggesting that Barbados had its homegrown Amazon right here in the sewage plant. That is the level of neglect that the previous administration would have done to our sewage plants in Barbados, in Bridgetown. And that is why I feel it is necessary to commend Minister Abrams and his team, because they have not only identified the issues, they have made an effort to rectify them, even before this levy has been passed and being an act, even before they can have access to the benefit of the proceeds from this levy, which will enable them to further assist with their initiatives. Now, once this levy is passed by this Honourable Senate and it becomes law, the current state of the sewage plants, because right now they're functioning. They're not at optimal levels, but they're functioning. And as my colleague correctly said, you're not seeing as much sewage on the street. I don't think you're seeing any sewage on the street right now. Now, I don't think that a magic wand was waved and it disappeared. Someone did something to rectify the issue. Now, once this levy is passed, we will now have funds which will enable us to upgrade the sewage system. Minister Abrams indicated that right now, one of the issues that is plaguing the plants is the need for the word is slipping my mind now, but essentially something that would prevent bulky sewage that should not be found in the sewage system from passing certain lines and going into the actual plant, causing a buildup and a blockage. Now, if we are able to upgrade those things with the much needed money, that means that Barbados will never have to see what we've just experienced over the last 24 months on the South Coast. That is what the money will be used for. That is called properly implementing a levy and executing it to perfection. Give us the opportunity to do what we said we will do. Do not judge us based on the fact that we say the word levy and tax. Because I started out this contribution, I said to you, I know and understand many of you are suffering from post-traumatic stress. This government is not like the previous government. This government will ensure that what we say we will do, we will do. And it is at this junction that I would like to say I support this bill and I oblige you.
Senator Tate.
Mr. President, in relation to the bill before us this afternoon, I join with my colleague, Senator Boyce, with respect to his concerns with Section 25B of the proposed bill. I would like to take it a little further as it relates to that bill. He primarily dealt with the domestic consumer, but my concern about the avenues that are available for persons to come before the Relief Board, particularly commercial consumers, is that these two subsections don't make any provision for underground leaks. So a commercial consumer who, according to this proposed bill, has to pay 50% of whatever is shown on the bill. It's not a daily thing like the domestic consumer. The commercial consumer has to pay the bill plus 50% of the bill. So if you're a commercial consumer and you have an underground leak, not a surface leak where you see it bubbling up, you do not know you have a leak until you get a bill that is telling you that something is wrong. Meanwhile, according to this bill, you will have to pay the bill, no matter how much it is, plus 50% of that. So if you had an underground leak that amounts to $10,000 of water in a month, because it's a 30-day period, you have to pay that $10,000 plus another $5,000 as the levy. So as far as I'm concerned, and I am particularly concerned because the definition of a commercial consumer, and I'm going to read it because I could, and because it's important for people to recognize who falls into that category. A commercial consumer under Section 21A includes a business, an industrial or farming activity, a government office, a school, ship, hotel, apartment, and guest house. I would be bold to say that there is no commercial consumer who, pursuant to Section 21D, subsection 5, the amount of levy payable by a commercial consumer shall, not may, shall be 50% of the amount shown on the water and services bill as due and owing for the supply of water services per month. The bill needs help, and I agree with Senator Boyce that it needs to be expanded, but I would also go beyond, because these sections A and B of 25(1)B are consistent with the, for elections, somebody cares. That was the theme. There was caring. You spoke of caring, I think it was, or was it Mr. Sands? I think you spoke about caring. And it is clear that subsections A and B speak to the inability to pay. You're financially unable to pay for whatever reason. But here's the thing. If you're a commercial consumer, you can pay, but you had an underground leak which is beyond your control. You already have to pay for the water. Like water authority is not going to absorb that cost. There needs to be a way for such a consumer in such a circumstance to have access to the relief board to be heard. For a case to be made why they should be paying the levy, or if they're going to pay the levy, what portion of the levy they have to pay on a bill that is already not theirs. Because if your regular water bill is $2,000 and water has run into the ground worth $5,000, you have to pay the $5,000. That's standard with Barbados Water Authority. It's the reality of owning business and owning a property. So in that regard, Mr. President, I would ask that the legislation, even with the suggestion from Mr. Boyce, Senator Boyce, be expanded to make provision for those type of contingencies. Leak is basic, and I would dare say that the Relief Board needs more latitude, because you're going to get applications for leaks. I don't expect otherwise. It is an everyday occurrence. It is a realistic occurrence, and therefore it is imperative that the legislation reflects and gives them the latitude so that we don't have legal issues, or you don't have a chairman or a board that say, well, we don't have the power, so we can't hear it. So what do? You will have to spend money getting a lawyer to appeal the relief. And this, as a matter of fact, this legislation does not even tell you where your appeal lies. So I assume you have to go to court. Now, you already got to pay for water that has gone into the ground. You got to go to court to get a court to make a ruling on the levy. No. I suggest you go back to the drawing board and expand Section 25B to make provision for the suggestions of Senator Boyce, as well as for things like an underground leak, which would be applicable with a Barbados Water Authority piece of legislation. If I may continue, sir, in that regard, Section 25(1) says, and I quote, a domestic or commercial consumer who is liable to pay the garbage and sewage contribution levy may apply to the relief board in the prescribed form and manner and within this prescribed time for a relief certificate. But I have read it a few times. I have not seen the prescribed form, the prescribed manner, or the prescribed time. So we have provision for access to a relief board for relief, to get a relief certificate, but we don't have prescribed form, manner, or time. If you look at Section 25D1, however, you will notice that there is provision for a 21-day period within which you can appeal the decision of the relief board to the minister. So there is prescribed time in the bill, but at appeal stage, I'd be bold to say that you need to be able to the bill needs to be fixed so that prescribed form, manner, and time is clearly defined. If not, in what manner are you making your application for relief, for your relief certificate from a caring board? And it's interesting that subsection 3 of that same section tells you all that the secretary has to do. Satisfy himself of the accuracy, inquire into the circumstances, prepare a report, and immediately forward the duplicate copy of the application. But there's no guidance as to how the application is to look, what manner it's supposed to be implemented, and what time you have to make your application to the board. So that is a fundamental flaw as it relates to the application for relief, sir. And I'm saying that that section needs to be further, to use my word, fixed. As it relates to and this is really just for mention, really, I noticed that section 1, subsection 3 of the second schedule makes provision for the removal of an individual for cause. I was just curious what this cause means, but I suppose you can take the attitude, those who giveth can take it away, so it doesn't matter. But I mean, if we're drafting new legislation, it's new, so let's make it right. There should be no room for ambiguity, uncertainty, or vagueness. Those are not words that apply easily to my profession. And if this is new or an amendment, let's get it right. What is for cause? What does that even mean? I go on. I notice, Mr. President, that very cozily in section 21D subsection 1, almost by the way, it starts off, and I quote, with effect from 1st August 2018, every domestic consumer and every commercial consumer of water supply services shall pay to the authority a garbage and sewage contribution levy. But you know, I already talked about this already. Today is the 30th. We had notice of this bill either the 27th or the 28th. And to make matters worse, the Water Authority is advertising that it will start on the 1st, and this chamber has not yet voted on it. And based on the things that have been raised here by Senator Boyce and myself, it suggests that this legislation needs to be further addressed. But here it is. We have an advertisement, Barbados Water Authority notice, water and service invoice for August 2018. The Barbados Water Authority takes this opportunity to remind its residential and commercial customers that the garbage and sewage contribution, or GCS, I beg your pardon, GSC, will take effect on August 1st, 2018. So what does that make this chamber, Mr. President? Mock sport? We are getting an announcement over it. Let me make it clear, go on. I should have perhaps go on. This contribution will assist the Barbados Water Authority, BWA, with the sewage systems and the Sanitation Service Authority, SSA, with garbage collection, was announced as part of the budgetary proposals on June 11, 2018. So if we are now here dealing with it, what are we doing here? How are we dealing with it? But a statutory board has already announced it. So what is our purpose? You're making sport of the Senate. What is our purpose that the Barbados Water Authority has not even been told, get things in place, but hold back till it get passed in the House? Because that's bad enough, because today is the 30th. The 1st is on Wednesday. So you're operating on the basis that there would have been ratification as opposed to amendment for whatever reason, to make it better, or because the way it came from the other place needed further addressing. You cannot continue with this. I would be bold to say, this, frankly, is offensive to me as a senator of the Senate of Barbados, because we appear to be working for this entity as opposed to the other way around. This is not yet law, but it is being advertised as a fact. There's something fundamentally wrong with this. That's what I got to say about that. And coming and sending legislation to this chamber before we have reached a position and given me a commencement date, 2 minutes or the same day as the debate, is also offensive. For fear of repeating myself, I say again, we have never had an opportunity to ascertain if the suggestions made by Senator Adams could have improved the Central Bank Act. Here we have brilliant suggestions by Senator Boyce and myself, as it relates, I can say, because they're the commercial consumer that will not agree with me if Senator Moore makes sure that it is reported in the press accurately, fully, and properly. That's what I got to say, because every once in a while, only certain people's reports are covered in the news, Mr. President. But there's no commercial consumer who pays attention to this legislation who is not going to have the same concern. So, we have legislation, and the reasons given by the government, what I would say, we have Senator Sands, we have Senator Spring. You know how I feel? I feel what comes to mind when I hear them speak. You know there's a nursery rhyme? Oh, McDonald had a... Yeah. Tots here, tots there, here a tots, there a tots, everywhere a tots. What that is, that nursery rhyme? That's what comes to me. Whatever it is, that's what the government's doing. You need the money, that's what they're saying. But there is a way of doing things. The Senate cannot be treated like we are not to be taken seriously. Something like this is not making sense. You come in and you want the tax, do the legislation properly. And not because you have the majority and therefore you're going to get the vote doesn't mean that it's right, because I remember the whole morning, at least 4 people on the government side talked about transparency. And I'm hearing that a lot, so that you know it's not spelled with the A-N-C-Y, it's E-N-C-Y, because you've seen it enough that you know how to spell it. Transparency dictates that whatever comes to us must be given an opportunity to be fully ventilated and properly ventilated before it can be deemed done. Don't mind if they're going to get the vote or not. You know when they tiptoe in this house, when it is a constitutional amendment that needs the 2/3 majority, then everybody complain because you need more than the government amount. You need 11 plus 3 is 14, and Mr. President, as you know, you cannot vote. So things have to tick a little differently when it is an entrenched provision in the Constitution. That being said, it does not mean that when we have things to do, they're not supposed to be done properly. We are a Senate. We are the upper chamber. If we are not doing things properly, who else will? When we have national events and parliamentary events, everybody sits behind us. We are in the front row. It doesn't matter how cold it is in the front, because it was cold in the parliament, y'all know that. But as I digress. They sit behind us. What is going on? As far as I know, Barbados Water Authority falls under ministry. It is not an independent entity, it's not a private sector entity. What is happening? You are allowing Senator Franklin's comments about wasting time to bear through. All right, I'm going on. So we start with this August the 1st. This is a bill that we received notice on July the 28th, which is a Saturday. I don't know if that's legal in my world. Saturday doesn't count. Monday to Friday are our days. Saturday, Sundays, and bank holidays on days that you cannot do business do not count as days, but we get days in the Senate of notice on a Saturday. And I only know it because I saw it today that we got notice on Saturday, because I didn't get the notice on Saturday. The bill is being debated for the first time on the 30th, and putting this date in means that you are assuming you ain't gonna find anything wrong with it, we ain't gonna want to make it better. Nobody ain't invited to say, so what are we doing here? Send it to us online, let me tick a box, because that's what you're doing. You are reducing the importance of what you want to do to something that is, to use your words, who said trivial? I am going to say frivolous. You are trivializing the importance. You have your manifesto promises. You have all the things you want to do, and there's nothing wrong with it because you do it properly. You are sending me legislation, presupposing that I'm going to be happy. And then you're not sending it that is even good. You're not sending it. You notice I ain't saying a word about NSRL, not to me. We're going to talk for the whole day about NSRL, about something that they weren't talking about. We didn't have to 4 o'clock. On NSRL, who is going, the only person that, you understand? Nobody else? But we have this, and you are making the assumption that I'm not going to have something to say. I'm going to have something to say. So don't send me things today for tomorrow. And stop sending me legislation that predates and presupposes my and our position. Because you have caliber people here who are going to give you guidance that makes what you want to do better. We ain't coming to keep noise. We're not coming to obstruct. We're all with the same agenda, I assume. The betterment and in the interest of the people of Barbados. How are you doing that? By disrespect, because This is disrespectful. Water Authority advertising over me, a senator, over us, senators. This is disrespectful. But they can only do what they have authority to do. So, somebody needs to get in their lane. That's why I got about this. On the question of commencement dates, I would recommend highly to the government, when they are giving me legislation and when they want to pass legislation, it is imperative that they give a commencement date. I'm not suggesting that you give me a commencement date today for tomorrow. But a commencement date allows for what you want to do to happen. And I'm going to say this to you. I know for a fact, 27th of June, we debated the amendment to the Barbados Revenue Authority Act. And we agreed to remove the need to have the tax clearance certificate. Okay? That bill was assented to by Her Excellency the same day. So you know what that means? Our Clerk of Parliament made sure it got to her the same day. And then everything went to a resounding halt because the various agencies that needed that information, because there was no commencement date, waited to see the official gazette. So, Barbados Revenue Authority still issuing certificates, lawyers still calling for certificates for conveyances and mortgages to close, and land registry still calling for it. Okay? I received my gazette on the 16th of July simply because I was here at a management committee meeting, and the clerk was kind enough to give me my, because I was asking for it. So we passed it on the 27th of June. Everything like up and down until the 16th of July. What's the point? What is the point? Nothing happened. Nobody would, and I will be bold to say, I have a colleague, I sent a copy of the legislation to her, and people were still challenging it on the other side. Why? Because when they called to find out if the publication was happening, they were told no. So somehow they thought that this was something that, I don't know, was made up. If we're going to be coming and you're going to run my blood to water and let me vex and let me come to do legislation today or tomorrow, you must have a commencement day. If not, it is counterproductive for what you want to do. NSRL was a ministerial announcement. That was happening right away. Prices cut, furniture done, promised to go look at a place on the weekend because they cut things by 20 and 40% because of NSRL, all kind, not this. And this was critical. That tax clearance was critical. And so it is important. And then, you ain't giving me a commencement day and this, this is what we're going to do. Imposition of the garbage and sewage contribution levy with effect from 1st August 2018. So, this is section 21D, subsection 1. That's where you put it. There is no lawyer, no, let me rephrase that. Unless you read this legislation from start to finish, you're not going to know what the commencement date is. Most people expect to see the commencement date at the commencement of the legislation. How will it drafting? Too much of a rush. Too much of a rush. But you want me to say yes to this. This doesn't have a commencement date. This has an pronouncement about something starting on the 1st. The airport service charge levy bill that y'all sent us has a commencement date with its own dedicated section. Mind you, it's at the end of the act, but you could shift it, but it's there. This ain't got none. But this happening according to that from Wednesday. This how we doing it? This is how we're doing it, Mr. President? Okay. So we need a commencement date. We need section 25. I just really don't. We need a commencement date. We need improvement, enhancement, amendment, modification of section 25B, subsection 1. B as in Bob, the application for relief. That is the one that Senator Boyce and myself have highlighted areas for, no, A and B can stay, but it needs to be enhanced to deal with Senator Boyce's submissions as well as mine. You can't have a legislation for water and don't deal with leaks. How y'all working that out? Now, with respect to the Sanitation Service Authority Act amendment, proposed amendment, I ain't even addressing that because I get that just now. I talked about that already. If you want me to look at things in conjunction, I get it. You can't take money and don't make a law to pass it on. I get it. But don't send out the work properly. And then again, Mr. President, it is not true to say that you can't do A and B because according to the Water Authority Act, it happening from the first, whether we have it in place or not in here. Because if for whatever reason we didn't have a quorum, what was going to happen on the first? If for whatever reason we did not sit today, what was happening on the first? Really? Really? Really, government? Really? Okay. And listen, I don't want to cast any aspersions. Let me make it clear. I am not casting aspersions on the staff of the BRA, Barbados Revenue Authority, Land Registry, or the government printing for that matter. They were right to wait for something in black and white. Let me say that clear. And I think it's commendable that the government printery was able to get it to us by when they did, because they are, as I understand it, overworked, understaffed, working in an environment that is archaic. Why do we not put them online, let people pay for subscriptions, and let everyone be happy? That's what I'm saying. But I don't know, Minister Moore, Senator Moore, again, Senator Moore, I'm not understanding, Mr. President. That is my submission for this afternoon. I don't know, I understand the concept of this bill, but in its current form, it doesn't get my support because, to my mind, the most important thing isn't collecting the levy. To my mind, the most important thing is the curing component of it, the relief component of it, and that won't fixing. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank you. Next recognized Senator Greenidge.
Thank you, Mr. President. My first remark, my introductory remark, comes as a result of something said by Senator Franklin. He urged us to use systems which were already in place. And I therefore take the opportunity to remind Senator Franklin and to remind other senators as well of what took place in the beautiful parish of St. Philip yesterday. Indeed, at Bushy Park yesterday, we had a situation where there were two competitions going. One was the Sweet Soca competition, and the other one was the Party Monarch competition. And it was a matter of using systems which were already in place. What had happened there is that even though there were two competitions, there was only one stage. They did not use two separate stages when one was working and working so very well. Why build another stage? That's the point. Would have been extremely costly to have two of them, and it would have been a lot more time consuming. And this is precisely what is happening where this Water Authority bill is concerned. The $45 in that solid waste charge is being put on the same platform on the same stage as your water bill. That is all that is happening. There is a system already in place and we're using it. And we're tacking that solid waste charge onto the water bill. Your actual water bill has not increased. And I hope Barbadians realize this. The actual water bill is not being increased. If we were using the same amount of water every week, every month this year as you were last year, it's going to be the same amount. There's not going to be any change in the charge for water. Your actual water bill is going to remain the same. And what you are going to see on that bill, though, you're going to see two separate figures. There's one for your water as usual, and there is then that charge for the sewage and the garbage. And this is so very simple to understand. But of course, there are some of us, I'm not saying some of us in here, but there's some of us who make no effort to understand and allow others to mislead them. Senator Franklin also was trying to point out to us why the money should be in the consolidated fund. And I have heard other people speak on it. Senator Franklin may very well be the best or one of the best economists in Barbados. But I have heard people like the representative for South Central, Marcia Cattle, the Minister Marcia Cattle. I have heard Minister Ryan Strawn. I have heard the Prime Minister, May Motley. And I have heard Dr. Clyde Maskell speak about this and why it should be where it is. And I must disappoint Senator Franklin. I prefer to listen to them any day. Any day. I have confidence in them. I'm not prepared yet to say that I have confidence in Senator Franklin. Not yet. Not yet.
Still on way.
Still on the way. I personally like the idea, Mr. President, of every Barbadian playing his or her part in finding a solution to this sewage problem, which was so graphically described in here by Senator Sands. The sewage that runs on the road, the sewage that ran, I should say, on the roads at Worthing and at Hastings had the name of every Barbadian written on it. The name of every Barbadian was written on that sewage. Not only the people who had businesses at Hastings and Worthing. It affected all of us. And in fact, if you listen to what was said, as Senator Sands said, someone saying, I'm not coming back to this place, it's nauseating. It affected all of us. And we need to take decisions like this one that we're taking. We need to take those decisions if we want to buy garbage trucks to make this place clean. We need to take decisions like this if we want to stop sewage from running on the streets. Okay. Yes, we need to take this decision if we want to give tourists a positive image of this country that we love so much. And this charge, $45 or so, will benefit Barbados. When the last administration left office, Mr. President, the sewage was running on the streets. And the public of Barbados does not want to see this country return to that position again. I have heard of tenants from the Lantern Mall tenants at Lantern Mall who were forced to move out of Lantern, even though the rent had been slashed to about half. They still moved away because of the sewage. It affected everybody. And you know, the former administration, they used to say that there's no money to fix the problem. That was their cry every day. We have no money. And you know, during the campaign, they asked on every platform of theirs, where they can get the money from, where she can get the money from. That was their cry. Well, the Prime Minister and this side, we are saying that this water bill, in our estimation, this sewage bill, it provides the best place, it provides the best opportunity, and it provides the best collection for what we have to do. We are very confident about that. Now, just to switch a little, Mr. President, the truth of the matter is that one of the things that caught my attention this evening was when Senator Merrick was speaking about Barbados being a water-scarce country, and when he was wondering what is going to happen sooner or later to our water supply. That touched me, and it touched me in a very personal manner. Very, very personal manner. My eyes was first opened to this problem when I taught in the Turks and Caicos Islands. In fact, I taught in both Turks and Caicos and the Cayman Islands, and they both had a similar problem. And it was only a couple of weeks ago that I was discussing with a retired judge the problems that we had in the Turks and Caicos Islands, where water was concerned. And, you know, we went back to the days when we had to pump water with our hands, take off our shirts in the evenings and pump the water with our hands. Because in those islands, the water falls, it comes from the roof down into that tank. And then you have to pump that water up from the tank, up into a rusty can. And that is the water that ran into your house. That is the water that ran into your house. After, when I couldn't handle it anymore, I used to pay a schoolboy who would come to my house about twice a week and pump the water for me. And the same thing used to happen. It wasn't child labor, no. The same thing used to happen with that same retired judge. He told me he had to do the same thing. But it was not, it was not. But the point I am making is this. I'll never forget it. About the second day that I arrived in the Turks and Caicos Islands, a friend of mine who was teaching there before me, he said, Cappy, let me tell you something. As long as you live here, do not look down in your water tank. Don't look down in the tank. He said, if you look down the tank, whether you boil that water or not, you will never drink water in this island again. We do not know in Barbados how lucky we are where water is concerned. Children at school, when they want to have a one-upmanship on another child, one child against another, the child used to brag and say, I am more than you because my mother has house and land, and listen to this, and tank. They always added that one on because tank was a social status. It was a sign of social status. We have house, land, and tank, so I more than you. The ones that did not have a tank in the Turks and Caicos Islands, which was about half the population, they would go to this big government tank to get their water. And very often, not very often, in fact it was a rule, you could only get so many buckets of water a day. And that was it for that household. We don't know how lucky we are in Barbados. When you dig in the Turks and Caicos Islands, when you dig about 5 feet into the ground, you got salt, water. The water there is brackish and so you can't use it. You can't use it. You know, when I returned, I said to myself, when I got back, I said, you know something? In Barbados, we waste so much purified water. It isn't funny. We waste a lot of purified water, good water, whether we wash the car with it, whether we use it on the plants. We flush the toilets with good purified water. I too feel like Senator Maynard hinted that one day that water will run out. I believe that we need two separate systems in the same house. One pure system and one not so pure system. The tank system here in Barbados. I believe that time is going to come. You know, the other thing that when I returned I saw, as a boy I played cricket very near the sea, very near Ragged Point Lighthouse, every weekend. And right there's a spring that runs right into the sea. Then there's a Treehouses spring just over there that runs right into the sea. Another one, not named after me, but it's called Greenwich's, runs straight into the sea. I mean billions and billions and billions of gallons of water have gone right into the sea. And let me tell you something about the spring there water. There's a spring there near the lighthouse. That water, I used to drink it every Saturday and Sunday. I have never tasted water anywhere in the world as nice and as fresh as that spring there water. Up through the rocks, into the sea that water goes. You know how many millions of gallons could have been bottled and that water used? I mean, we waste so much water. We do not know how lucky we are. That could never have happened in the Bahamas. It could never have happened in the Cayman Islands. It could never have happened in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Those people would have been so happy to see that water. It isn't funny. We waste and waste and waste. You know, for us living here in Barbados, we take it for granted. It's no big thing, but for many living elsewhere, water is a luxury. Every single time we go to that tap and we turn it on, we expect water to flow, and it flows. And that is all that we're interested in. That's all. But I would hope that I said some people, you eat nuts, and this happened to my sister. You eat nuts, and a few little pieces of the nut, and you just wash the mouth out in the toilet, and you flush that water, and that water goes clean, fresh water. You think that can happen in the Turks and Caicos Islands? You wash a spoon, and you take 3 minutes there to wash it. You think that can happen in the Turks and Caicos Islands? Nothing so. We can be described as an army of water wasters. But we are lucky. We can do it because we're lucky. We're lucky. But I am hoping though that, yes, I believe some people would say that this is a raise in my water bill. I can see more money. But if it serves one purpose, for me, I would feel happy. If people would say, now I can see that extra thing, I will try not to waste as much water as I usually do. Mr. President, I'm obliged.
Thank you, sir. Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise, sir, to give my support to this bill which is before this honorable House. Sir, just a few things I would like to start with before getting into the main aspect of my presentation. And I just want, sir, to reflect on what the Sanitation Service Authority Act, and just as one statutory entity, is required to do. The statutory responsibilities of the authority are: one, the collection and disposal of refuse, street cleaning, the operating of public baths and conveniences, and the administration of 5 public cemeteries. Sir, I start with that only to reflect on what Senator Franklin said in his contribution. Then he spoke about giving an instruction to a minister, or a minister giving an instruction and a board purchasing vehicles, and just in a sense without any reference to what is required of the board with respect to the act. And I want to say this, Mr. President, that I would expect in this administration that members of statutory entities will function within the construct of the law, and that they would have the intestinal fortitude to stand and to represent what is right. So that whatever Senator Franklin was referring to that may have occurred in the past, I certainly, sir, do not expect that it would occur now. I also, sir, want to make some reference to some comments that were made about treating the House in a very trivial kind of manner, treating this honorable chamber. And I, sir, want to make it absolutely clear, and I believe, sir, I can speak for all of us on this side, that we certainly come to this chamber understanding the very serious nature of the work which we have to engage in, prepared, sir, at all times to function in the best interest of the people of Barbados, with no intention or desire to trivialize what we are doing here. Sir, if I wanted to talk about trivia, I would talk about the fact that on the South Coast, we had a situation where there was sewage flowing on the streets. And the government there repeatedly asked the then government to deal with the issue. Sir, I did not see the former Minister of Health. I did not see the former Minister of Tourism or any of them, sir, deal with the issue. And I, sir, on many occasions spoke about the fact of how the inaction would have caused severe damage to our tourism industry. And I'm amazed, sir, that literally overnight there is no more sewage flowing on the South Coast. And I can tell you, sir, I drove there up to yesterday. I drove there last week. In fact, I live in Christchurch, and with my daily work, there are members of my association on the South Coast. And I am amazed, sir, that the place is dry, dry, dry. But you know, sir, what it signals to me? It signals to me, sir, that leadership is important. And it also signals to me, sir, that when there is a problem, you must face it and you must fix it. You have to act. If that is not trivia, sir, then I do not know what is. Sir, if I wanted to talk about trivia, I would speak to the fact, sir, that since 2013, under the last administration, there would have been an average of 15 garbage trucks every day going out to facilitate the collection of garbage. When, sir, 42 trucks are needed. 35 trucks to be able to carry out the regular activities that are required. Another 7 trucks, sir, to deal with any breakdowns, to deal with maintenance. So I should point out that while, and I believe that Senator Sands made reference to it, while you may start with 15 trucks, at the close of the day, the business day, you had 12, 11 trucks. That certainly was not good enough. And we, sir, are seeking through the government to ensure that we put the measures in place now to facilitate getting the trucks that are necessary to start to reverse what was certainly an unacceptable behavior by the last government. Sir, I should also point out that while I talk about only having 15 trucks, there was no, and I said before that there was no preventative maintenance being undertaken. Sir, the vehicles did not get any time to rest. So you had a situation where you had a small number of trucks in comparison to the numbers that you really required. And once the truck got back into the yard, from the time it got in, another fella jumped on, and the truck went off. And you know, sir, what that caused? That caused, sir, an increase in the amount of money that was required for maintenance. Sir, between the financial years of March 2014 and March 2018, the Sanitation Service Authority would have spent in excess of $21 million dealing with maintenance for these trucks and not having a maintenance program in place. It also facilitated, sir, the requirement and the use of private services. And those private services cost the government of the day, and still facilitating the cost, sir, of $7.5 million. And I say to you, sir, that that is certainly unacceptable. And we have to ensure that we function in a manner that is significantly different to how the last government functioned. And that we have to give the assurance that this money is going to be used in the way in which we say that it is to be used, and it is going to be financially prudent in terms of how the SSA will be able to utilize the money. Sir, I have to tell you that I don't expect, because I saw, sir, in a brief that, and I am not an attorney at law, but I was somewhat amazed. I saw in a brief, sir, legal fees in the amount of $5.8 million for services with Cahill Energy Waste to Energy project. But I mean, sir, I am not an attorney, but I must tell you that I have a law degree, and when I saw that, I thought to myself, listen, I need to go to law school. I need to get a law degree, and I need to do one case like that and then retire. Because with $5.8 million, sir, let me tell you, I could live pretty good. $5.8 million. Sir, that will not happen, sir. That will not be the case with this government. Sir, do you imagine, can you imagine, sir, in November of 2017, a contract was signed for services to be provided to the Sanitation Service Authority. The mobilization fee paid, and up to this day, no action has yet been undertaken by the entity contracted. And you know, I heard Senator Franklin speaking to the fact that you have to go after these people. I'm not only going to reference that, I'm going to reference the fact, sir, we're talking about trivia, that a government sat and allowed those things to happen. And we certainly, sir, are not treating to the business of the people of Barbados like that. This is serious business. You know, the comment was made about the level of taxation. In fact, Senator Franklin said there is no need for the tax. It is an unfair tax. Sir, I'm reflecting on something that a former Prime Minister asked. He asked, how did we get back here? We got back here, sir. We got to this point, as was referenced before, on the precipice of disaster due to mismanagement, due to inaction, due to an ineffective government. Sir, we have to take the necessary actions. But you know what, sir? This is the difficult task. This is not easy. And just looking at the Sanitation Service Authority alone, to move from the 15 trucks that we have, in order to move to 42 trucks that are required, you know what it will take, sir? It will take money. I have a friend, sir, who says to me all the time, he says, Rudy, I know you care about people. And I'm sure all of us are aware that we care. But he says to me, sir, it takes cash to care. And I reference, sir, the fact that it takes cash to care because with this tax, with this levy, everyone is required to bear some of the burden. That is it. And the government has sought to put measures in place to ensure that those most disadvantaged are better able to deal with the challenges of the burden. But all of us have to bear the burden. Sir, there's a 40% tax, is the luxury taxes on incomes that starts from the 1st of August. So I must tell you that I don't particularly want to lose more money out of my salary. But the truth is, I have to pay like anyone else. Certain people whose salaries are above the $75,000 as identified the other place have to pay this 40% tax. So the point is, sir, that we have to everybody has to share in the burden. So, you know, the SSA is also involved with solid waste management. The landfill at mangrove, the Greenland landfill, different activities, the asbestos and fiberglass disposal site. Do you know, sir, that the SSA does not have any heavy-duty equipment to be able to deal with what is required in the landfill? And Senator Sands is correct. There is an amount of $36,000 a week that is spent, $1.872 million a year being spent on facilitating equipment that the SSA should be purchasing. And when you sit as a government, sir, and allow those types of things to happen, in my view, you are trivializing the work of the people. Sir, in closing, I want to reference the words of Mahatma Gandhi. And he was speaking, sir, about sanitation. And he said that, and you know, sir, that he fought for justice, equality. He fought against the actions of imperialist England. He said sanitation is more important than independence. And he tied it in with lifestyle and personal actions. And sir, I want, before I take my seat, to make an appeal to Barbadians in terms of how they function with respect to waste disposal. It is not acceptable, and I'm not speaking, sir, from the perspective of visitors, because I have to tell you that I believe that if we put the best measures for good conditions in place for Barbadians, that visitors will benefit from that too. We're not doing those things just for visitors. We have to do them for Barbadians. And sir, I want to appeal to Barbadians to examine carefully the way in which they deal with disposal of wastage. Because every Barbadian, sir, has a role to play. Mr. President, I remember in tourism, when there was this saying, tourism is our business. Let's play our part. Sir, I want to change that slightly. And I want it to be, Barbados is our business. Let's play our part. Sir, it is critical and it is important that all of us do what we can in order to ensure that we make Barbados a cleaner, nicer place for all. Sir, I give my support to this bill.
Thank you. Time has come now for Senator Nurse. I recognize him.
Thank you, Mr. President. I shall be fairly brief, but I just want to make a few observations. First of all, I don't want to belabor the point in regard to the lateness of receipt of these bills. It has already been spoken to by virtually every independent senator who has spoken this evening. But I think it is worth making for the record that you are concerned of this situation, and we hope that to see some improvement as we move through the sessions of the Senate. I'd just like to comment on one perhaps technicality which Senator Greenidge made when he referred to the fact that, and he emphasized there was no increase in the water rates. Technically, that would be so, sir. But the fact is that when I have to pay my next water bill in August, I'm going to have to look for an additional $45 added on to my water charges. So it really matters me not if we call it a levy, a tax, an SRL, whatever. The point is, as a consumer, I am being impacted. And I want to, I think it was a point which was raised by perhaps Senator Franklin, but I think that perhaps in setting this levy, it may have been better if this levy was set based on usage rather than a flat $1.50 per day, as is the case. I think it impacts very heavily on those who pay a minimum water bill. I believe the minimum water charge right now is $32. So when you add $45 to that bill, you have more than over 100% increase the cost to that little pensioner who is getting, well, now I understand, now $255 a week, but you know, an increase of whatever, but you're taking back out $45 out of it. So I think it would also have been useful, and Senator Greenidge spoke passionately to this, and it's something I wanted also to speak on, of the situation in Barbados being a very water scarce country. So that if you had charged it on usage, you would have given the opportunity for consumers who might be abusing the water situation to be more conservative in their use of the water. And as it is really a very serious matter. I, like Senator Greenidge, would have spent some time in other countries like Bermuda, and I would have seen where it is absolutely necessary that every person has to have some water collection system. And we need, therefore, to be, I would like to see, what I would have liked to hear more discussion on this is not that we are going to give the Water Authority some more money to assist with dealing with the sewage issue, but a little more discussion as to how we are going to implement a program to ensure that going forward we try to utilizing our scarce, very scarce water resources in a more sensible manner. I think, for example, that the time has come when it is absolutely necessary that any construction, any building construction now should require that a time be necessary to harvest rainwater, which can be used for various purposes other than, of course, for drinking, but we can use them for several purposes in the home. And I think that it is necessary now that we start to look at these things seriously. I think, for example, the Water Authority needs to start to look at, we know we have the rainy season and the dry season. We know when the dry season is upon us. We always hear the reminders that we can only use the water for certain purposes. But I think also what the Water Authority may need to start to look at is the introduction of variable rates. For example, a rate which is different in the dry months, which again discourages people from using excess consumption. There's no harm in having variable rates throughout the year. I think too that we perhaps need to relook at the whole management structure of the water authority. It beats my mind to understand how systems could have been neglected for long periods of time, and just in 3 weeks' time, systems could have been repaired and put back into use. And I'm speaking of the sewage system in Bridgetown. And that, for me, is a management issue. I don't think that any minister should necessarily have to take blame for something like that. That is a management issue, and something must have been really badly awry that's had to or was not attended to until a minister of government got involved. So I think that you perhaps have to look at the whole management structure again of the Barbados Water Authority, see if it is being as efficient as it could be, and ensure that we try and cut out all of these wastes, these inefficiencies that is preventing the authority from doing the things that it is required to do. Additionally, I think, and I believe, I speak subject to correction, but I think the time has come where seriously the energy used by the Water Authority has to change. It cannot continue to depend on the electricity, the government's electricity system, to power the pumping stations. I think they have to very quickly start to look and implement PV systems at all of their pumping stations, all of the reservoirs, etc., to ensure that they can reduce significantly the cost of doing business. If that is done, perhaps we would not, if those things are being done, perhaps we would not now need to be to introduce this levy to get additional money to do some of the things that we now have to do. I also want to look at the issue, Mr. President, of the sewage and the garbage. I think there's no doubt that we need additional trucks for collection purposes. But I think that, for me, again, a deeper discussion would have been not so much about getting these trucks, which we have to do, but to discuss how we are going to tackle this problem of these amounts of garbage that was mentioned earlier that has been building up on the streets. So I want to see, in a more holistic way, or to hear in a more holistic way, a discussion about plans for the collection and dealing and disposal of garbage in this country. I am thinking, for example, that we have to begin to recognize that we have to sort our garbage at source. We all travel to North America, to the UK, to Canada, to wherever, and we see in the homes 3 and 4 different garbage bins, and people have to sort their garbage. And we go and we happily do it. So why is it that as part of our overall management of our refuse system, that we can't put that in place here in Barbados? What you would be in fact doing is beginning to reduce the amount of garbage needing to go to the landfill, and therefore you wouldn't need to have 52 trucks or 100 trucks or whatever amount is now said to be required to be able to deal with all this garbage. I can tell you, because I, about 2, perhaps 3 years ago, started doing some level of sorting at my house. I now sort the PET bottles. I now sort the organic waste, which I make into my own compost. I have my own compost heap. And what I have found is that perhaps by about 50%, I have been able to reduce the amount of garbage that I actually put out for collection by the Sanitation Service Authority. So I'm thinking that if every household were required to do that, we could be significantly reducing by about 30, 40, 50% the amount of garbage going to the landfill. Landfills, which is now lasting perhaps 20 years, would now be lasting 40 or 50 years. We would be seeing the benefits of people perhaps being encouraged when they start to do the composting, of going into some backyard gardening. And so we would really be beginning to make a significant effort in tackling that garbage problem. I don't think that, while I accept and I understand the need to have these trucks, that we need to have a more deeper discussion about the overall management of our garbage. Starting in the schools also, we should be encouraging our school children at schools to be doing a similar thing. They can be doing some sorting at school. And at every level, if we start to do this, I would think that we would begin to reap the benefits of tackling our garbage disposal, and of managing in a more holistic way, and saving a lot of the resources that we now have to spend a lot of money in order to put these issues right. I also want to touch on the issue of styrofoam. I know, for example, that a number of our Caribbean neighbors have already gone about introducing or banning the use of styrofoam. Up to today, reading in the press, I know that Trinidad is going to be starting in 2019. So, you know, we are lagging behind our neighbors, behind the world, and to my mind, these are the more important issues that we must be speaking to and dealing with if we are to ever overcome this garbage problem that is really now totally out of hand. So, Mr. Speaker, as I said, Mr. President, as I said, I would like to hope that as we move ahead from here, that we would be looking to have a more in-depth and significant discussion on these issues as they pertain to garbage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I rise to close the debate on this bill. I first of all want to thank all of the honourable senators who've contributed. I will just highlight in terms of three senators, Senator Boyce and Senator Tate, your comments and suggestions, amendments. Senator Boyce, you've given me your changes, your necessary changes. I've made adequate notes of comments and recommendations of Senator Tate. I understand your concerns and recognize that there are some limitations herein, but as you will well appreciate, in terms of the constraints in which we are operating, we will have to take note, and I assure you that the comments will be passed on to the Attorney General's office and to the Solicitor General's chambers. In terms of the comments of Mr. Senator Nurse regarding garbage disposal and reduction of garbage, I want to assure you that within the relevant ministries there are copious files, as you would be, number of files dealing with these matters. There used to be a solid waste management unit which was the responsible, which was to deal with a number of the issues that you mentioned. Indeed, in 2007, the solid waste management unit was well on its way. It had negotiated the SBRC matter, but more importantly, they were into schools. They had started in schools doing extensive work in terms of recycling and in the introduction of home composters, recognizing that if they could get children involved in these activities, then it would spread to the adults at home. Apart from that, they had done seminars in terms of pushing the use, as you said, removing your organics and dealing with it at home. And they had entered into an arrangement with a certain business house to offer home composters to those who were willing to buy them. But certainly they were showing people how to construct home composters so that you could do your own composting, of course, and use it for agricultural purposes in your backyard gardens. As it relates to the separation, there was discussion about this, great details, recognizing that you would introduce separation at source, but you would require, in terms of your collections, you would have to collect different things on different days, and you were supposed to do a costing in terms of the adequate number of trucks or the fleet that will provide this, but also bearing in mind that when you got to the recycling plant, you will still need to do some separation because of the best intention, people still do country, and it was something new to the Barbadian psyche and the Barbadian culture. And these things were looked at. They need to expand the Return Containers Act to take into consideration, in addition to the PET bottles, the detergent containers and all of these things. Looking at encouraging people in the disposal of boxes, cardboard boxes, and bailing them, requiring business houses to do with a lot of this. So a lot of work was done. Regrettably, last time I inquired about this solid waste management project unit, it had been reduced to about 2 people responsible, and it no longer existed as such. It was somewhere consumed within the Sanitation Services Authority. But I take your point that this has to be looked at going forward. And as I said at the outset, there will certainly be a need for a fuller and more extensive debate about solid waste management in Barbados in total. Having said that, Mr. President, I now beg to move that the Barbados Water Authority Amendment Bill 2018 be read a second time. Advance will be read for a second time, so you have the
question is that this bill be now read a second time. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposing? I was asking whether there are any voices opposing the reading of the bill a second time. No.
Just ask.
I was asked whether there was any voices opposing the reading of the bill a second time. Yes, we recognize one. I think the ayes have it. A division has been called for. The clerk, you will go through one by one and make sure that you record.
Oh, you finish it with dinner. Dinner is downstairs. Dinner is at the stage. Dinner is provided. Dinner is provided. Right. Talk about another clause.
Yeah, you can divide it in the stage.
He's asked for divide.
If you ask for divide, go ahead.
He's asked for divide.
You want to divide. You want the record to show how each and every senator voted.
Divide you get. We bring seriousness to our discussions in here. As he's on the senators asked for a divide, which is his right.
42, yes.
Standing order 42.
Standing order 42. Division. The division shall be taken by the clerk, calling each senator's name and asking each senator separately how he deserves to vote and recording the vote accordingly.
Yeah, no, it's divide this evening. Anybody missing? 3, 6, 9, 11. It's 11. He's very strong. He got it, but his fellas and then he got it, but he
This record trivializing this. This record trivializing this.
Senator Maxwell is not here. Reverend Maxwell is not here. This is what you do. We are taking our business seriously.
This record trivializing itself.
This is what we are taking our business seriously.
This it?
Tell you about it.
Senator Walker?
Yes.
Senator Moore?
Yes.
Senator McConnell?
Yes.
Senator Springer?
Yes.
Senator Grant?
Yes.
Senator Holder?
Yes.
Senator Cummins?
Yes.
Senator Haynes? Senator Sands?
Yes.
Senator Adams?
Yes.
Senator Franklin?
No.
Senator Boyce?
On the commitment of Senator Walker's statement, yes.
No conditional.
Conditional, yes. Well, just asserting that. That's a yes.
Senator Moore?
Yes.
Senator Tate? Senator Tate?
Yes, subject to your commitment to make the relevant amendment.
Subject to.
Yes.
Senator Maynard?
Yes.
Senator Nurse? Yes. Your Honor, Senator Greenwich?
Aye.
Mr. President, 16 honorable senators voted in favor. There was 1 voting against.
Following the division, correct in saying that the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
It is removed that I do now leave the chair and the Senate resolve itself into committee for the purpose of further consideration of the bill. All those honourable senators in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I think the ayes have it. I now absent myself.
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All honourable senators against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. No. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. All senators against, please say no. No. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that clause 4 stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. All senators against, please say no. No. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 5.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 5 stand part.
The question is that clause 5 stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. All senators against, please say no. No. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 6.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 6 stand part.
The question is that clause 6 stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Six. You got 6 now. 6 now, right?
6 gone.
Right, so it's 7. 6.
Clause 7.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 7 stand part.
The question is that clause 7 stand part. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report. Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honour the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honour the President the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. No. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman has just reported to me the passage of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
Now be moved that this bill be now read a third time. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. The ayes have it.
Those against, please say no.
Yeah. I think in the light of our earlier events, though, I should ask. Those not in favor? No. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Water Authority Amendment Act 2018.
We move that this bill be now passed and be so cited. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. I think the ayes have it. Those against? No. I think the ayes have it. The division has been called for.
Senator Walker,
Yes.
Senator Moore,
Yes.
Senator McConney,
Yes.
Senator Springer,
Yes.
Senator Grant,
Yes.
Senator Holder,
Aye.
Senator Cummins,
Yes.
Senator Haynes,
Yes.
Senator Sands,
Yes.
Senator Adams, Senator Franklin,
No.
Senator Boyce, Senator Moore, Senator Tate, Senator Maynard, Senator Nurse, Your Honor, Senator Greenwich.
Aye.
Mr. President, 16 honorable senators voted in favor of the passage and 1 honorable senator voted against.
Already divided, I think we can confidently say that the ayes have it. There's no recording of the decibel level.
Order number 5, sir. In the name of the Honorable Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Sanitation Service Authority Amendment Bill 2018.
Mr. President, when I spoke on the earlier bill, I made reference to this bill, and I spoke at that time about the Sanitation Services Authority, as did the representative of the opposition. And having said that, I now beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be now read a second time. All those in favor, please say aye. Those against? I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that Your Honor do not leave the chair and the Senate resolves itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
We move that I do now leave the chair. The Senate resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. I think the ayes have it.
We're going already, going to meeting now. We know. Fire sanitation. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like a, it's like a shoe in a sock. You ready? Senate is in committee. Senate is in committee. You ready? You ready? You ready? You ready?
The Senate is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. All honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I have no doubt that it will be passed. But for the record, I want the Senate to know that I am opposed to receiving a bill today, debating it today, passing it today, and having it placed on the books tomorrow. This clause 2, we are establishing.
Senator Franklin, are you speaking on clause? You're speaking on clause 2.
Yes, sir. That's what I'm saying. This clause 2. This clause 2 is giving the Sanitation Service authority to receive money from the Barbados Water Authority. Sir, I tell you, and I will insist, I will say it to my dying day, this is bad legislation. I understand the intent, but it circumvents established practice in the public service, established our governance. By when you want to buy a truck, you want to buy anything, you get money from consolidated fund. That has been my position, and it will remain my position. This is bad legislation, sir. The government needs to rethink this. I do not like to see government money put in everybody's hand to be fitted away. Something is wrong with this. How were we buying trucks all along? We didn't have a fund. Sanitation Authority don't buy trucks. The government buy them again, the Sanitation Service Authority. Why this new approach? I'm not even smelling a rat. I just don't like it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
Question is that clause 2 stand part. Honourable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no.
No.
Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honourable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no.
No.
Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the President the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Pedro.
The chairman has reported to me the passage of one bill in committee.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be now read a third time.
It has been moved that this bill be now read a third time. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this bill be due now passed and be cited as the Sanitation Service Authority Amendment Act 2018.
It be moved that this bill do now pass and be so cited. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. I think the ayes have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move that this sitting be suspended for 15 minutes. I believe the Select Committee has matter to attend to in terms of the integrity bill, committee selection for the integrity bill. I'm asking that this sitting be suspended until 6:25.
It be moved that this sitting be now suspended for 15 minutes until 6:25. All those in favor, please say aye. Oh, is there any dissentient voice? I think the ayes have it for the suspension for 15 minutes. It's 6:25.
Select committee. Members of the select committee, yourself, who's first? You have it there. Senator Moore, Senator Sands. There's another one.
Roman Spurs, Damian Sands.
Look at here, look at here. Lisa Cummins.
No.
That not that one?
That was to be selected.
Oh.
I raised a
Oh, this select committee with your.
I thought that the joint select committee, that 6 had to come from the Senate. When I look at
So where we going? And then, senators, this is just what we have to do. There's no further business.
Select committee.
After this, we do.